Chapter 181. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had slipped by. The Wind Blood Unit finished sweeping the remaining sections of Area 13, reported their findings to the base, and returned. Ye Tian stayed behind to keep watch. The base agreed to let him remain as long as he filed a report once a day. After 3 more days, the cooldown on Ye Tian's replication talent ended. He could duplicate himself again. Before making his move, he sent a message to the base. The report was mostly a fabrication. He claimed he'd discovered a problem in the beast nest and asked that one of the 36 emperors be dispatched to reinforce the area immediately, preferably someone stationed up front. His fabricated warning said that if the Void Flower were taken, the Emperor-level Guardian, the golden-winged Pengeagle, would become furious and its rage could sweep the whole sector. Without precautions, the base could suffer heavy losses. The message was meant to prompt a strong response and give the base time to prepare in case things went wrong. Once it was sent, Ye Tian slipped into the cave. After a short while, he reached the chamber where the golden-winged Pengeagle lay and crept up to its flank. Upanishad's flying talent copied. Top/talent copied. After copying those 2 talents in rapid succession, Ye Tian finally focused on the Void Flower. He moved, then moved again, closing the distance faster and faster. Within moments, he was only a hand's breadth away. With a lightning-fast reach, he snatched the Void Flower and sucked it into his carrying space. He activated teleportation and flung himself into the passage. He hadn't tried to slip away quietly. A slow retreat would have put him within striking range of the golden-winged eagle. If it attacked recklessly, being that close would be fatal. The eagle's strikes were devastating, and even a glancing blow could maim him. "Ah!" the golden-winged eagle shrieked. It opened its eyes, saw the Void Flower was gone, and instantly sensed Ye Tian's presence. Without hesitation, it unfurled its golden wings and slashed through the void. The air exploded with a thunderous roar. Golden light ripped through the void, filling the cavern with a blinding radiance, the after-image of the golden-winged eagle's countless slashes. The light slaughtered everything in its path. Countless ferocious beasts fell, and even some saint-level creatures were struck down. The eagle showed no pity for the deaths of its own underlings. Only one thing mattered to it: killing its enemies. Boom! The solid stone walls of the underground chamber trembled beneath the onslaught and disintegrated into dust. Ye Tian darted and warped through space, narrowly avoiding each lethal sweep. In an instant, he teleported back to the surface and continued to jump away. After several successive teleports, he activated his invisibility talent and slipped into a river, one of the escape routes he'd planned in advance. No sooner had he submerged and gone invisible than the massive golden-winged eagle appeared overhead. Its divine consciousness unfurled like a net across thousands of miles, meticulously scanning the ground, the waterways, and every beast within its range, inch by inch. Instantly, its awareness homed in on a faint disturbance in the river, an almost imperceptible trace left by Ye Tian's presence. The golden-winged Pengeagle swept the area within a 100,000-mile radius, but it found no trace of Ye Tian. He was crouched in the riverbed mud, his supreme stealth talent fully activated. The eagle's powerful divine consciousness swept over the spot several times, yet it produced not a single fluctuation. Ye Tian's concealment held. Fortunately for him, the eagle had no special ability to pierce that kind of stealth. Still, Ye Tian couldn't relax. One careless movement, and he would be exposed. After failing to detect him, the golden-winged Pengeagle went into a frenzy. It tore up the earth, annihilated anything that crossed its path, and slaughtered countless fierce beasts in a furious rampage. By then, the base had already received word. One of the 36 emperors had attacked. Ye Tian had no idea what was happening outside. He didn't dare make a move, not even use his disguise talent. Even if he transformed into a ferocious beast, that golden-winged eagle could probably kill his saint-level beast attendants in a single sweep. After half a day, the sounds of battle finally died away. Relief washed over him. He was glad his cautious plan had been followed. If he'd relied on camouflage, he might have been cut down by that enemy's wings on the first strike. He also had to admit he'd overestimated the value of stealth. Against such terrifying foes, invisibility was meaningless. Their attacks could sweep across vast distances and strike indiscriminately. Disappearing wouldn't help if you were caught in the blast. Another half-day passed. When night fell, Ye Tian slipped into a shadow state and left the river. He teleported repeatedly, closing the distance to the base. Only when he stepped inside its defenses did a heavy weight lift from his chest, and he finally let out a long, slow breath of relief. 10 minutes after his return, Ye Tian was summoned to the fortress of Emperor Kui. When he entered the throne hall, the emperor stared at him in disbelief. "We thought you had fallen," Emperor Kui said. "How are you still alive?" Ye Tian gave a faint smile. "What happened back there? Why did that emperor-rank beast act so violently?" Emperor Kui's expression sharpened. He had not been present during the attack, and Ye Tian was the only human who had witnessed it firsthand. "Explain everything to me," the emperor said. "Only you can tell me exactly what happened." Ye Tian blurted out hurriedly. "A fierce beast broke into the nest. It slaughtered several saint-level beasts. A huge bird burst out, furious, and started killing everything in sight. I was in stealth and managed to hide. Luckily, I wasn't hit by its attacks. After that, I only heard the sounds of the battle, so I stayed hidden and didn't dare come out until it was over." "That's what happened?" Emperor Kui said, nodding. He believed Ye Tian. He knew how terrifying that golden-winged eagle was. Even someone with Ye Tian's talent for invisibility would stand no chance if the eagle actually detected them. Kui therefore didn't think Ye Tian had provoked the bird, but he was wrong about one thing. Ye Tian looked at him expectantly. "So how did the fight end?" "A 36th emperor was badly wounded," Emperor Kui said. In the end, the Tomahawk Emperor himself struck. His blow gravely injured the attacker, but the opponent's speed was incredible. It slipped away in an instant and vanished into the shadows. Even the Tomahawk Emperor couldn't keep up with it? Ye Tian's eyebrows rose in surprise. Emperor Kui nodded. "Yes, that great bird probably has an Upanishad's-level flight talent, and its cultivation isn't weak. Its speed exceeded the Tomahawk Emperor's. On top of that, when it was badly wounded, it triggered its bloodline power, and its speed skyrocketed, so the Tomahawk Emperor couldn't close the gap and abandoned the chase. I'd put that bird at least in the top 5 on the divine list." "So powerful," Ye Tian murmured. He corrected Emperor Kui silently, though. It wasn't a speed talent per se, but a flight talent that made the difference, and then allowed himself a small smile. "Go back first," Emperor Kui said. "You did well on this. If you hadn't warned us early, we might have sent only a few ordinary emperors to deal with it and suffered heavy losses." "It was nothing," Ye Tian replied, genuinely embarrassed. "Just a small matter." He had already worked it out. If Emperor Kui, or one of the wounded 36 emperors, ever discovered the truth, they'd have torn him apart. After saying his goodbyes, Ye Tian returned to the castle to rest and prepare to fuse the 2 talents he had copied into his palm. Chapter 182, Copy the Upanishad's Flying Talent First. Ye Tian made up his mind. The Upanishad's flying talent and the Upanishad's speed talent might sound similar, but they serve different purposes. Flying talent governs acceleration and maneuverability in the air. Speed talent only raises raw top speed. In many situations, flying talent is far more valuable. In zones where flight is suppressed, even for king or saint-level cultivators, those without a flying talent are grounded, while cultivators who possess a flying talent can often still take to the air. More importantly, for Ye Tian, the Upanishad's level flying talent would let him move quickly while remaining completely steady in stealth. It provided rapid, controlled flight without the fluctuations that could betray him, exactly what he needed to work in concert with his stealth ability. Saint-level flight might be quiet, but it didn't mesh as well with stealth the way the Upanishad's skill would. Fusion. The Upanishad's flying talent began to merge with Ye Tian's own. The process started with a low rumble and then settled into a steady hum. 10 minutes later, it was finished. Ye Tian checked his talent display. The flying talent had been upgraded from high to Upanishads, flying talent Upanishads. That marked his 4th Upanishad's level talent. Without pausing, Ye Tian moved on to fuse the supreme slashing talent next. There was almost no pain. The highest grade slashing talent fusion had succeeded. Ye Tian discovered at once that the ability was far from simple. It could grant any weapon, or even a body part, a slashing property capable of cleaving through extremely tough materials. Eager to test it, he drew 2 high-level Yuanli blades, one in each hand. He brought them together with identical force, but quietly he infused one of the blades with the slashing property. With a sharp crack, the unenchanted blade exploded into fragments as if it were brittle glass, while the blessed blade remained completely intact, not even a scratch. Ye Tian's eyes lit up. With a top-tier slashing talent, he could utterly destroy an opponent's weapons, and against hard-bodied beasts, he could shear through scales, armor, or bones with a single stroke, gaining a decisive advantage in combat. He thought of the golden-winged eagle. It must have imbued its wings with the slashing property, making them effectively indestructible. No wonder the creature's wings were such terrifying weapons. If I bless my Morningstar blade, then anyone else's Morningstar weapon will be easy to cleave. Ye Tian turned the Morningstar blade over in his hands, thinking. The blade had come from the temple space and was far beyond the level of an ordinary Yuanli divine soldier. At first he hadn't known what to call it. Only after asking the Crazy Sword Great Sage did he learn it was a Morningstar blade, an artifact so rare that even many saint-level swordsmen did not possess one. He was already pleased with the talents he'd gained. The Upanishad's flying talent and the supreme slashing talent satisfied him. But what he craved most was the void flower. He drew a deep breath and slowly took the void flower out. Holding it so close, desire surged through him until he could no longer control himself. Without hesitation, he swallowed the void flower in one gulp. A flood of energy poured into the replicating talent imprint. Ye Tian immediately felt his strength drain. His eyes fluttered shut, and he fell into a dead sleep. As he slept, the replicating talent began to undergo a new transformation, absorbing the void flower's power and changing to a higher form. The next morning, Ye Tian woke slowly and rubbed his temples. "I'm dizzy again," he muttered. He deliberately reached out with his mind and communicated with his replication talent, probing to see what, if anything, had changed. Consciousness communication was his way of interrogating other talents and of studying his own. Within moments, he had a clear picture. The replication talent's range had expanded to 5,000 meters. The replication interval D been shortened to half a month. The number of times he could copy remained 2. In practical terms, this was excellent. His copying reach was vastly greater, and he could duplicate talents much more quickly, even those still recovering from cooldowns. But those practical improvements were not the most important development. The real breakthrough was integration. It wasn't about fusing copied talents together. It was the ability to fuse his own 2 innate talents into a new one. That new ability would surpass either of the originals, the natural next step beyond his current innate talents. Ye Tian stared at the ceiling, heart beating faster at the implication of it all. Not every Upanishad-level talent could be fused. Fusion required compatibility. Some combinations were impossible. Speed and defense would never merge, nor could strength and speed be combined. But there was one option Ye Tian hadn't expected. His Upanishad-level speed and Upanishad-level flying talents showed a possible fusion. A small icon had appeared on his retinal display between the 2 talents. The fusion function could only be used once a month, and for now those were the only 2 talents eligible. But a month's cooldown was nothing compared to what he might gain. He didn't hesitate. He activated the fusion. A low, bone-deep rumble rolled through him as the 2 talents began to meld. Pain stabbed through his chest like a drill, forcing him to his knees. He gritted his teeth and fought the urge to collapse and writhe on the ground. The agony was almost unbearable, but the thought of breaking past the Upanishad limit and acquiring something greater still ed him. The fusion lasted for half an hour. When it finally ended, he issued the command to inspect his status. View. He stared at the talent display, face hard, and waited to see what the new combined ability had become. The 2 previous Upanishads-level talents, speed and flight, had completely vanished and been replaced by a single new talent, speed talent, God-level talent. Ye Tianming stared. This was an entirely new tier, breaking past the Upanishad ceiling. God, such a lofty, absolute word. To call a talent God-level said everything about its power. He realized the logic. An individual talent could only reach the Upanishad's level on its own, but fusing two Upanishad's talents could elevate the result to God level. Of course, not every talent needs the God rank to be devastatingly useful. Soul attack talents, time and space talents, soul transfer abilities, many of these never become God level, yet their utility rivals or even surpasses that of some God level powers. His consciousness linked with the divine grade extreme speed talent. Through the talent's imprint, he sensed the amplification parameter, 300 times. Ye Tianming's breath caught. A 300-fold increase in speed was absurd. To imagine what that would mean for his movement, reaction time, and combat ability was almost beyond comprehension. After acquiring the divine grade speed talent, Ye Tian felt noticeably stronger. In a good mood, he slipped out of the fortress to stretch his legs and wander the surrounding countryside. Before he realized it, he had found himself standing before the palace of the Tomahawk Emperor. Two stern palace guards flanked the great doors. Ye Tian had an idea. If he could trade his Shouyuandan sword technique with the Tomahawk Emperor and get that emperor's sword skill in return, his power would soar. He stepped up to the guards. "Please tell him I'm here," Ye Tian said. "Say that Ye Tian Desheng requests an audience, and mention Shouyuandan." "We can only deliver messages through the usual channels," one of the guards replied apologetically. "We aren't allowed to disturb the master directly." Before Ye Tian could reply, a clear voice rang from inside the palace. "Don't report it. Bring him in." It was the Tomahawk Emperor himself. Chapter 183, Please Come In. The two king-tier guards stepped aside. With the Tomahawk Emperor's permission, no one dared to block Ye Tian. He walked into the heart of the Tomahawk Emperor's palace and came face to face with the man who had forged the strongest superbase in Zhonghai. "I've come to see Tomahawk the Great," Ye Tian said, dropping into a salute. As a matter of habit, he scanned the Emperor's attributes at a glance. Identity, human, Lin Zhan, cultivation talent, Hui Yue, power talent, Upanishads, speed talent, Upanishads, defensive talent, Upanishads. Tomahawk talent, top tier, 3 major Upanishad talents plus a top-ranked Tomahawk weapon talent, truly fitting of the Tomahawk Emperor. No wonder he stood first among Zhonghai's superbase masters, Ye Tian thought with quiet admiration. Even so, the Tomahawk Emperor did not possess a god-level talent, which only confirmed what Ye Tian had suspected. There were no god-level talents in the Zhonghai superbase. The only god-level talent present was his own, extreme speed. "Ye Tian," the Tomahawk Emperor interrupted, his voice urgent and excited. "Is it true you told people at my palace gate that you have information about Shouyuandan?" He had been hunting for any news of the Shouyuandan, but it seemed impossible to get it refined at the Zhonghai superbase. It wasn't just that the ingredient quality varied. More importantly, the pill could only be refined by a Morning Star alchemist, and there were none stationed at Zhonghai. "Actually, yes, I have one on me," Ye Tian said. The Tomahawk Emperor panted in surprise. After searching for so long, it had appeared now, of all times. "You do, really?" "Not bad," Ye Tian replied. "But I have a condition." "What is it?" The Tomahawk Emperor's voice was imperious. As the leading figure at Zhonghai's superbase, he felt entitled to promise almost anything within his power. "If it's within my ability, I swear I'll do it." "I've heard you possess a sword technique that ranks higher than gold," Ye Tian said. "I want to trade the Shouyuandan for that sword technique." "Wait, you want to trade for that legendary sword technique?" The Tomahawk Emperor blinked in surprise. "That technique is excellent, far beyond the gold rank, but its talent requirement is off the charts. Only someone with sword aptitude above the highest standard could hope to cultivate it. I don't recommend you choose this." "Legendary sword technique," Ye Tian repeated, finally putting a name to the level. His voice was firm. "Emperor Tomahawk, I'm only interested in sword techniques. I will only trade for that legendary sword technique." The Tomahawk Emperor studied him for a long moment. "Very well, but understand this. Once the exchange is made, you can't ask for your payment back if it proves useless to you." "No regrets," Ye Tian said, nodding. The Tomahawk Emperor produced the secret manual for the legendary sword technique. In return, Ye Tian uncorked the jade bottle and revealed the Shouyuandan inside. At the sight of the pill, the Tomahawk Emperor's face lit up. "So it really is the Shouyuandan," he breathed. visibly delighted. He had studied countless ancient texts about the Shoyuandan and knew exactly what it looked like and how to recognize it. He could be absolutely certain this elixir was the real thing. A broad grin spread across Ye Tian's face as he turned to the legendary sword technique that had just materialized in his hand. 3 simple, archaic characters hovered in his field of vision. Star Slash. The 3 characters radiated a majestic power, as if they could cleave sun, moon, and stars. From a quick appraisal, he was already sure this technique surpassed ordinary golden-ranked sword skills. Tomahawk Emperor, I'm going back to practice the sword art. This is goodbye for now, Ye Tian said. Go on then. The Tomahawk Emperor waved him off, impatient for Ye Tian to leave. It wasn't that he wanted to drive Ye Tian away. If Ye Tian departed, the Emperor could immediately return to his wife and give her the show, Wuyuandan, using it to extend her life by another 100 years. Back at his lodgings, Ye Tian activated the defensive formation and the sound insulation array, then wasted no time beginning to study the Star Slash. Half an hour later. It really is complicated, far more intricate than a gold-ranked sword technique, and its power utterly eclipses anything at that level. Even the entry-level legendary sword technique boosts attack power by 30 times. The minor achievement stage raises it 50-fold, the great achievement stage 80-fold, and at perfection, it multiplies attack power by 100. Ye Tian stared at the page, stunned by how terrifying a legendary sword skill could be. Sword techniques can stack with power talents. If a sword skill multiplies your attack 100 times and an Upanishad's level power talent also multiplies it 100 times, together they would amplify your strength 10,000-fold. Such an increase could truly defy the heavens. This is impossible, too difficult, he muttered, shaking his head. Compared with learning a magical technique, perfecting a legendary sword skill was on a completely different level. With his current sword realm, he could, at best, only reach the entry level of that legendary technique. The basic Star Slash will still boost my strength, Ye Tian said with a small smile. I can't be greedy. It's time to be satisfied. From then on, he threw himself into training Star Slash. The base had built several cultivation chambers. As long as Ye Tian didn't activate his Upanishad-grade power talent, his power wouldn't wreck them. Having just completed a major mission, the base normally wouldn't assign him anything else right away. He'd at least be given a month's rest unless something unusual happened. He'd only been training 20 days when a new task came in, interrupting his cultivation. It was a frustrating blow. His Star Slash hadn't even properly awakened yet. He'd only touched the threshold. It couldn't be unleashed at full strength, and was essentially useless in a real fight. If he had another month, he was confident he could bring Star Slash to true entry level. New task. Assist the Moon Emperor in tracking the trail of a fierce beast. Ye Tian's expression soured. The Moon Emperor was one of the 36 emperors. This wasn't a routine assignment. It was far too dangerous for someone in his current condition. Go first, then ask to be excused from the mission. Ye Tian headed for the Moon Emperor Palace, the hall where missions were assigned. The Moon Emperor herself stood in the center, and around her clustered the 36 emperors, the Battle-Axe Emperor, the Blood-Eyed Emperor, and the rest. Ye Tian, you're here. The Battle-Axe Emperor's face was unusually warm. His wife's lifespan had been extended by 100 years thanks to the Shoyuandan. Ye Tian had given them, and all the Battle-Axe Emperor had paid in return was an obscure legendary sword technique that could do him little good. Ye Tian inclined his head and answered the other's greetings. Then he cleared his throat. Your Excellency, could this assignment be given to someone else? I'm only a saint. It feels improper for me to be assigned to assist the Moon Emperor. Boy, are you afraid of dying? The Blood-Eyed Emperor snapped, his eyes widening theatrically. Ye Tian inwardly rolled his eyes. That was hardly subtle. Why say it so bluntly? Ye Tian, getting to serve the Moon Emperor is the dream of countless people, and you're not even happy, the Tomahawk Emperor teased. The Moon Emperor really was something to behold. Though she was only a little over 70 years old by the calendar, she was the youngest among the emperors. At 20, she founded the Moon God sect, and in a remarkably short time, it rose to the top ranks of power, becoming one of the 4 greats, and even driving the scattered Cultivation alliance onto the defensive. She was the fastest woman ever to attain imperial rank and remained unmarried. With the Moon Emperor's 3,000-year lifespan, a woman in her 70s was as youthful as an ordinary girl of 17 or 18. To many, she was a living goddess, aloof, breathtaking, and almost impossible to approach. Unfortunately, that same coldness kept most people at a distance. The Tomahawk Emperor, the Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor, and the others hovered 10 meters from the Moon Emperor. Any closer and they would have been pushed back by his momentum. He wouldn't let anyone approach without resistance. But the Tomahawk Emperor and the rest had been briefed on the mission. Ye Tian had to get close. That was why the assignment fell to him, and why everyone else couldn't help but envy him. Chapter 184. Ye Tian frowned, still unsure of the situation. Why me? There are so many holy and even emperor-rank cultivators here. Why should I help the Moon Emperor? I want all of you to explain this to me. Emperor US said nothing. He simply fixed Ye Tian with a cold, unrateable stare that seemed to say, "Consider yourself lucky I even asked. How dare you refuse?" The Tomahawk Emperor stepped forward to speak. "Ye Tian, you have a peerless stealth talent, don't you?" he said. "That talent makes you nearly undetectable, even to emperor-level beasts, and you can cloak another person with you. We've already lost many strong fighters searching for that fierce beast with a soul talent. Last time we stumbled and alerted it, we frightened the snake by beating the grass, and now it will be much harder to find. So here's our plan. We want you to take the Moon Emperor with you and go in stealth. The Moon Emperor carries a supreme treasure that can protect 2 people from soul attacks. You and he will locate the soul-apt beast while remaining hidden. Once you find it, the rest of us will move in and finish it off." Ye Tian absorbed the words. The stakes were clear. His unique ability made him the key to finding the beast without drawing it away, and the Moon Emperor's artifact gave them the only real defense against its soul power. Refusing wasn't just a slight to Yue, it could cost more lives. Ye Tian was at a loss for words. The Tomahawk Emperor and the others had already discovered his supreme stealth aptitude, something he couldn't very well refuse. He grinned and asked, "So, what's in it for me?" Heads turned. Several emperors stared at him as if they wanted to pry his thoughts out of his skull, but for the sake of the alliance, they kept their composure. After a moment of tense silence, the Moon Emperor, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "If this is true," he said, "I can authorize a month's access to the Moon Godsec's lunar pavilion." The announcement hit like a thunderclap. The Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor flared up immediately. "Emperor Yu, that's far too much," he snapped. "I begged and offered everything before. I even promised great rewards just to get 10 days in the lunar pavilion for a prodigy of my witch god temple, and you refused, and now you're offering a whole month?" Jealousy boiled over in the room. The Tomahawk Emperor and the others scowled, clearly resentful of such a generous concession. Ye Tian blinked, puzzled by their reaction. "Excuse me, sirs. What exactly is the lunar pavilion?" Their obvious envy told him it must be extraordinary. The Moon Emperor regarded Ye Tian steadily. "The Lunar God Pavilion is another rare treasure I stumbled across," he said. "If I pay a heavy price, I can open it and greatly accelerate the opening of someone's mind domain. When I first reached the holy level, I used it and finished my holy cultivation in only 3 short years, then shot straight into the imperial level. But the cost of running the pavilion was tremendous. If I hadn't obtained the ancient sect lineage and a huge hoard of resources, I never could have kept it open for those 3 years. It would have nearly drained everything I had. Ever since, I've barely ever opened it. I won't even activate it for other saint-level disciples unless they bring me an extraordinary contribution. If you help me finish this task, though, I'll make an exception. I'll open the lunar pavilion for you and let you cultivate there for a month." "Yes," Ye Tian blurted without hesitation. This was a golden opportunity. He had never even heard of a place like that before. The Moon Emperor was only a Huiyue-level talent, yet in just 3 years he had advanced from first saint to emperor, a leap that would take most Huiyue geniuses 50 or 60 years. The effect of the lunar pavilion was plainly miraculous. With 3-fold acceleration already working in his favor, and being a Shiri-level prodigy to boot, if Ye Tian entered the pavilion, the results would be even more phenomenal. His cultivation would inevitably skyrocket. To refuse such an opportunity would be sheer foolishness. "Since you promised, let's go," the Moon Emperor said, striding ahead. Ye Tian fell in beside him. Only the Tomahawk Emperor and the Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor remained behind, exchanging looks. "Tomahawk Emperor," the Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor asked, puzzled, "why did you say the Moon Emperor would demand such outrageous terms?" He couldn't help wondering, would Ye Tian really take on this mission for such a small reward? "I don't understand," the Tomahawk Emperor shook his head. "The Moon Emperor is rising far too fast. Her place on the current Emperor list can't be explained by strength alone. If she hadn't inherited the real power left behind by the previous Moon Emperor, she probably wouldn't have gotten this far. She's too mysterious. I actually think she's hiding something. I can't figure her out. Yeah, I used to think I was stronger than her, but now she's clearly surpassed me," the Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor said with a teasing smile. "At this rate, in 10 years, your position might not even be secure." She laughed. "Still, being first on the imperial list is a good thing. If someone overtakes me, I'll only be glad." The Tomahawk Emperor waved off the concern and laughed. He didn't care much for rankings. Outside the base, Ye Tian watched the Moon Emperor with keen interest. Her offer had sounded almost too generous for a mere assistance task, and the promised rewards excited him, but he wasn't naive. There had to be something else behind it. He wouldn't be foolish enough to press her for details and risk angering her, only to have the reward withdrawn with nowhere to turn. He expected to feel hostility from the Moon Emperor, but instead sensed only a faint warmth, not malice at all. "Right, a man's intuition," he told himself. They flew on for a while, then the Moon Emperor said, "Here, take my hand and activate your invisibility talent." "All right." Ye Tian took his hand and, for a moment, noticed a faint flush across the Moon Emperor's beautiful face. It was gone almost at once. Invisibility talent. On! In an instant, both of them vanished from sight. "My flying talent emits no detectable life force," the Moon Emperor said. "It's much more covert than simply flying on your own. If I fly with you, we won't be easily found." "Good." Ye Tian nodded and took hold more firmly. He activated his own flying talent, and together they sped through the void. As they flew, Ye Tian's mind wandered, and he realized how soft the Moon Emperor's hand felt. If the Moon Emperor ever guessed what he was thinking, Ye Tian thought with a wry inward smile, he might very well kick him out of the sky. Days passed. Ye Tian and the Moon Emperor had been tracking the fierce beast's trail for weeks, repeatedly plunging deeper into the beast realm with no luck. No one could say how vast that world truly was. Half a month slipped by in the blink of an eye. Then one day, Ye Tian spotted something at last. A clash, a titanic battle between two Emperor-level beasts. Their movements were colossal, impossible to ignore. A thunderous shock rolled out like a drumbeat. It felt as if 100,000 miles had become a battlefield. The two opponents radiated power on a scale that rivaled the legendary 36 Emperors. At that moment, the Moon Emperor produced a small mirror. He channeled his Yuan force into it, and an unmistakably clear image of the battlefield bloomed across its surface. "What treasure is that?" Ye Tian asked, curious. "The lunar mirror," Emperor Yu said. "It can probe the situation within a radius of 200,000 miles. It's not something you find easily." "Jackpot," Ye Tian murmured. The Moon Emperor really was a walking treasure trove. He could practically feel himself stripping every last artifact from the man's person. No, not the man himself, the relics and treasures embedded on his body. Then something above the lunar mirror caught his eye. One of the fierce beasts circling there. A golden-winged eagle. He breathed. Chapter 185. The golden-winged eagle Ye Tian had just seen was the same one he'd encountered at the beginning. There couldn't be two identical golden-winged eagles by chance. Apparently, after it was beaten by the Tomahawk Emperor, it had flown here, and unaware of what it was getting into, had run straight into a fight with another Emperor-level ferocious beast. "We've got a lead," the Moon Emperor's voice said in Ye Tian's ear. "What led?" Ye Tian asked. "That big eagle is the one I found before," the Moon Emperor explained. and the creature that attacked it is the same Emperor-level ferocious beast that tangled with us last time. It's extremely fast, precisely why the Emperor-level beast with soul talent managed to escape. If we can track this Emperor-level beast, it might lead us to that soul-talented one. But I can't keep up with it. Ye Tian frowned. His cultivation was too low. Even if he activated his god-tier extreme speed talent, there was no way he could catch up with them. Let me carry you, the Moon Emperor Yuo offered. It will cause some fluctuations in your yuan force, but Emperor-level fierce beasts fly very quietly. If we tail them closely, we won't stand out. They'll hardly notice us. Okay. Ye Tian agreed without hesitation. He turned his attention back to the other Emperor-level beast. The fact that it could go toe-to-toe with the golden-winged Peng Eagle suggested it held the advantage. Perhaps the Peng Eagle hadn't fully recovered from its wounds. The beast looked like a giant hedgehog. Its quills were extraordinarily tough and regrew at an astonishing rate. The Peng Eagle's golden slashes shattered some of those spines, but new ones sprouted almost instantly. Meanwhile, the hedgehog-like creature kept driving its quills into the Peng Eagle again and again, leaving the great bird battered and bloodied. Ye Tian and the Moon Emperor watched the fight for an hour, until at last the golden-winged eagle broke off and fled. The hedgehog, an emperor-rank ferocious beast, had been badly spent by the battle. It didn't bother to chase the eagle. It snorted once and turned away. "Keep up," the Moon Emperor ordered, tugging Ye Tian along and streaking after it. At the Moon Emperor's usual speed, they were able to keep pace with the hedgehog without difficulty. The beast didn't try to accelerate. It cruised at a steady, unhurried pace, riding the high of its victory and never suspecting two humans were trailing behind. After some time, it dropped down to hunt several massive king-rank beasts, fed until satiated, then took to the air again. An hour later, the hedgehog finally landed in a vast valley. From the valley's center came a faint, ominous scent, the lingering aura of other emperor-rank ferocious beasts. The Moon Emperor halted in midair and turned to Ye Tian. "Your turn, Ye Tian." Ye Tian squeezed the Moon Emperor's hand and guided him as he activated his flight talent, keeping their pace deliberately slow. This valley might hide soul talent emperor-level fierce beasts, and it was an old nesting ground. Anything could be inside. If even one creature could pierce his stealth talent, they would be exposed. No matter how powerful the Moon Emperor was, he was only one. He couldn't take on a crowd of emperor-level beasts alone. They had to be careful. So Ye Tian didn't soar. He hovered low, scanning the surroundings with concentrated attention. Saint-level fierce beasts drifted past in the distance as they made their way deeper into the valley. Gradually, the shapes of Emperor-level beasts appeared. The Moon Emperor's brow tightened. There were far more Emperor-level beasts here than the last time they'd come. The Emperor-grade beasts had clearly stepped up their defenses, especially around those Emperor-grade animals with soul-type talents. They were being hidden and guarded with extreme secrecy. Ye Tian extended his replication talent outward, sweeping a 5-kilometer radius ahead of him. Instead of using divine consciousness or spatial perception to scout, methods that would be too raw, risky here, he relied on his copying ability. That talent probes only an opponent's innate ability, but from the pattern and nature of a creature's talent, he could infer a great deal of useful information. More important, the replication probe was undetectable. No beast, no spirit sense, no spatial ward could perceive it. In a place where others dared not employ overt senses, his approach was clearly the safest and most effective. The valley was thick with trees and teeming with beasts. Even the Moon Emperor, powerful though she was, grew tense. Deep inside a lair full of Emperor-grade predators, a single mistake could be fatal if they were discovered. Gradually, Ye Tian's replication swept up one Emperor-grade beast after another. Wherever his talent reached, it wrapped around them and laid bare their talent signatures, giving him a clear picture of the foes hidden in the forest. Species: Spiny Beast Bloodline Talent, Huiyu Speed. Talent: Upanishads Power Talent, Upanishads. Defense Talent: Pseudo-Upanishads, 60%. Healing Talent: Pseudo-Upanishads, 50%. Armor Breaker Talent, Top. There's a Pseudo-Upanishads level healing talent. Ye Tian felt his heart leap. His own healing talent was only top. While it gave him a good recovery rate, At the Saint level, that speed still lagged behind the pace of an all-out fight. A Saint-grade opponent could strike dozens of times in the blink of an eye. Even top-tier healing couldn't patch him up fast enough. Enemies simply wouldn't give him the breathing room to recover. In a real battle, top healing was often ineffective. Pseudo-Upanishads, though, that was a different matter. Before this spiny beast had tangled with the golden-winged eagle, the eagle had sliced off its thorns many times, but each time they regrew almost instantly. That regeneration speed was far beyond what Ye Tian could manage. It wasn't something he could mimic casually. If he wanted that level of resilience, he had to copy it exactly. Copy. In an instant, Ye Tian duplicated the spiny beast's 50% pseudo-Upanishads healing talent. At last, Ye Tian's gaze fixed on an emperor-level fiend, a spirit cloud beast. He scanned its attributes at a glance. Bloodline talent, Huiyu. Defensive talent, Upanishads. Speed talent, Pseudo-Upanishads, 30%. Strength talent, medium. Soulthorn talent, top rank. Soulthorn? Ye Tian murmured, stunned. A soul talent? If that was true, this spirit cloud beast would be a soul-type emperor-level beast, the very kind that had given the Tomahawk Emperor, the Moon Emperor, and the Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor so much trouble. He didn't hesitate. With emotion almost too small to notice, Ye Tian copied the beast's top-rank Soulthorn talent. Copied, he thought, and shot a glance at the Moon Emperor as if to say, found it. The Moon Emperor bristled with suspicion, but there was no overt transmission to risk alerting others. Any active broadcast of power would create fluctuations in divine consciousness, and there were too many Emperor-level beasts packed into this valley. The chance of exposure was far too high. Silently, Ye Tian tugged at the Moon Emperor and began to drift away, putting distance between them and the valley until they reached its outer rim. Moon Emperor, I found it. The Emperor-level beast is in the valley. What? You're sure? The Moon Emperor snapped, incredulous. How did I miss that? Are you certain it's the same Emperor-level creature we were tracking? I'm sure. The Moon Emperor's expression softened as he explained. You gave me a description before, and I have a way to watch from a distance. It's not as far-reaching as your lunar mirror, but it's subtle and hard to detect. The beast I saw fits your description exactly, and it's surrounded by other Emperor-level beasts. It has to be the one. Ye Tian's confidence was absolute. Chapter 186. The Moon Emperor stared at Ye Tian, half convinced, but still hesitant. If she used the lunar mirror to scout the valley, she could know for certain whether Emperor-level beasts were there, but she could not risk it. Anyone with a powerful soul could pick up traces of the lunar mirror, and last time it had been detected. No matter how urgent, she would not expose it again. All right, she said finally. I believe you. She picked up the messenger talisman and sent the location to the Tomahawk Emperor. The message pinged through, and the coordinates were relayed. The Tomahawk Emperor had been warned of the situation. We'll wait for them, the Moon Emperor decided. On the other side, the Tomahawk Emperor received her signal and began rallying the other emperors at once. This time he meant to act decisively. He ordered 80% of their forces to converge and encircle the target, prepared to suppress any Emperor-level beasts that appeared. The base sealed itself and activated a massive defensive array so they could hold out if the enemy laid siege. When the emperors had assembled, the Tomahawk Emperor raised his voice. Move out! A thunderous rumble answered him as the gathered forces surged forward. A stone statue of the emperor shot into the sky and vanished in a burst of light. Everyone in the base felt it in their bones. A terrible battle was about to begin. A few hours later, the Moon Emperor received a summons from the Battle-Axe Emperor. The message was blunt. They have arrived and are slowly advancing this way, one by one. Stand down and let us deal with them. This is an Emperor-level war. You mustn't get involved. Ye Tian, the Moon Emperor, nodded. He had no desire to be dragged into a clash of emperors. He could handle ordinary opponents with his power, but these were his peers, or worse. There was no point in risking everything for a fight he could not win. With that, he gathered his forces and withdrew, flying off toward the horizon. Not long after, from their vantage, they could see the others approaching. Ye Tian had never seen so many emperors gathered in one place before. Counting carefully, there were 126 of them. Below them, the Battle-Axe, the Tomahawk Emperor, was flying low and slow when a voice rang out. "Tomahawk Emperor." "It's the Moon Emperor," someone replied. The Tomahawk Emperor stiffened as recognition hit him. A moment later, two figures appeared nearby, Ye Tian and the Moon Emperor. "Let go of my hand," the Moon Emperor said, her voice cool and unreadable. Ye Tian hesitated, then reluctantly released her fingers. Everyone around them froze. No one present knew that Ye Tian had been quietly aiding the Moon Emperor, or that he possessed an extraordinary talent for stealth. All they saw was a mortal, Ye Tian, a saint-rank cultivator, standing so close to the Moon Emperor that he had taken her hand. Gasps rippled through the assembly. No one dared come within 10 meters of the Moon Emperor. She was distant as the moon itself. And yet here was Ye Tian, close enough to touch her. The thought was unthinkable. The Moon Emperor was famously cold and aloof. Many likened her to the moon god herself, and she had forbidden male disciples within the lunar god sect. How could such a woman ever show affection for a man? A low, incredulous murmur swept through the gathered emperors. The Moon Emperor swept down and reported, "Tomahawk Emperor, Ye Tian has already located that Emperor-grade feral. There are a lot of them in the valley, at least 80 Emperor-grade ferals. 80 Emperor-grade ferals." The Tomahawk Emperor's brow rose. He hadn't expected the other side to amass so many in such a short time. Emperor-grade ferals are solitary by nature and difficult to bind together. That's one reason humans have been able to hold the space rift. If all the ferals united, we couldn't possibly maintain it. In fact, the population of Emperor-grade ferals far outnumbers human emperors, easily by an order of magnitude. The blood-eyed witch emperor only smiled. 80 ordinary Emperor-grade ferals? She said contemptuously. I could take down a pack of them by myself. This time, almost all 36 of our emperors have come. Do you really think we won't win? Surround that valley and kill that soul-level ferocious beast at all costs. Understood? The Tomahawk Emperor's voice rolled like thunder. Understood, came the reply from a dozen other emperors. Let's move out. The Tomahawk Emperor led the emperors into the sky in a steady formation. The Moon Emperor came along as well. No one paid much attention to Ye Tian. His task was already done, and whether he stayed or left made no difference to them. Still, Ye Tian didn't linger. He drew back 100,000 miles, cloaked himself in invisibility, and watched. Then the world seemed to explode. Booms after booms shook the heavens, light rent the sky, and the battlefield became a maelstrom of power. Countless peaks shattered, and the land heaved. Mountains and rivers vanished as if erased, streams ran dry, and untold numbers of ordinary fierce beasts were turned to ash in the conflagration. It probably won't be over anytime soon. I should fuse the two talents I just copied into my hand. If anything goes wrong, at least I can save myself, Ye Tian thought. He started with the Soul Thorn talent, the rare soul attack ability he had been coveting. Fusion, he commanded. As the Soul Thorn began to merge with his own soul, a searing agony ripped through him. Boundless pain surged from the depths of his being, but Ye Tian gritted his teeth and held on. 10 minutes later, the fusion completed. The Soul Thorn had taken root. A rush of relief and excitement washed over him, so it really was a soul attack talent. He tested it immediately on a nearby low-level ferocious beast. Invisible soul energy condensed into a spear and shot out, piercing the creature's soul. The beast collapsed silently, dead. Encouraged, Ye Tian turned to the other beasts and tried the talent on them as well. No beast, whether mid-level, high-level, top-tier, or a lordly king beast, could withstand Ye Tian's soul thorn. Each strike disintegrated its target. Even ordinary saint-level beasts fell to his soul assassinations twice over. The only limit was the technique itself. It could be used at most 20 times before exhausting his soul power. Once that quota was reached, the ability went dark. He would have to rest for several days before his soul power recovered enough to use it again. He had also fused in 50% of a quasi-mystical level healing talent, a life-saving boon. Within 10 minutes, the fusion finished. His healing aptitude had advanced to a 50% quasi-mystical level, and his recovery rate multiplied many times over. When the energy ripples from the distant battle finally reached him, they were much weaker than before. The ebbing fluctuations told him both sides had taken terrible losses. Ye Tian sighed. How many human emperors had fallen? His thoughts drifted to the Moon Emperor. The question came unbidden and urgent. The Moon Emperor should still be all right, right? He wasn't sure whether he was more worried about the Moon Emperor himself or about his reward. In any case, of all the imperial ranks, the one person he least wanted to see harmed was the Moon Emperor. Then suddenly, boom, a terrifying clash rang out. Even Ye Tian, 100,000 miles away, felt the earth tremble and the mountains crack. His summon screamed, "Ye Tian, run!" Something's wrong, Ye Tian realized at once. Chapter 187. The message to Ye Tian had come from the Moon Emperor. The Moon Emperor's words were simple and terrifying. Escape. If even the Moon Emperor was ordering a retreat, the emperors were in serious trouble. Yet it made no sense. Human emperors, in both number and strength, should have had the advantage over the beasts. How had the tide turned so suddenly? Without hesitation, Ye Tian fled. He activated his stealth and flight talents, slipping away in a way that would hide his trail even from emperor-ranked beasts. Still, he knew those abilities were no guarantee if the beasts launched a full-scale assault. He had to put as much distance as he could between himself and the battle, and fast. He had flown some distance when the din of combat behind him abruptly fell silent. Good. Time to clear the war zone, he thought, his expression darkening. But before he could push on, a thunderous impact slammed into his senses. He whipped his head back and saw, to his shock, a blood-smeared woman hurled through the air by an emperor-level beast. She crashed into a mountain so hard that the rocks splintered and cracked under the blow. Moon Emperor! Ye Tian's eyes narrowed. Even injured and bloody, he could tell at a glance who she was. It was the Moon Emperor. She lay grievously wounded, blood-streaked, and breathing at the level of an ordinary emperor. Whatever had just happened to her had been brutal. A run-of-the-mill emperor-level beast couldn't have inflicted wounds like that. The Moon Emperor is in danger, he realized, alarm flaring. He knew his own limits. The beast before them was far stronger, at least 5 times his power. If he didn't act, the Moon Emperor might die. Still, he couldn't run. "I'll save her," he said, voice steady. The Moon Emperor had already sent him a message telling him to flee, but he refused to abandon her. As the Emperor-level beast lunged for another strike, Ye Tian unleashed his ultimate spatial talent. He cast a top-tier spatial confinement, a sky cage, to trap and block the attack. The spatial field froze the void, and even the Emperor-level ferocious beast's assault was slowed to a crawl. Ye Tian's spatial constriction had mostly taken hold of the beast. The Moon Emperor was caught by it too, but far less. She still retained enough control of the battle's rhythm to seize the opening. In an instant, she struck. A full moon, fractured with countless fissures, blossomed behind her and erupted into a storm of moon blades. The blades lanced forward and converged on the beast's neck, striking the same spot again and again until the creature was torn apart. The Emperor-level beast collapsed in a shower of blood and bones. The victory was costly. The Moon Emperor had been wounded repeatedly during the fight. The injuries worsened with each blow, and she staggered, collapsing down. Ye Tian teleported to her side and caught her as she fell, holding her to his chest. "Go, quickly! It's not safe here," Emperor Yue ordered through gritted teeth. "What happened?" Ye Tian asked, his voice sharp with concern. The Moon Emperor had only just begun to speak when his body went limp and he collapsed. Panic shot through Ye Tian. There was nothing he could do but shroud the Moon Emperor in stealth and carry him, hidden, back toward the base. On the way, he ran into swarms of Emperor-level ferocious beasts. He scanned desperately for any sign of human emperors, the base's defenders, but there was no trace of them anywhere. With his own strength and his top-tier spatial talent, Ye Tian could have slain a weaker Emperor-level beast, but he dared not risk it. If even the Moon Emperor had been felled like this, whatever was out there had to be terrifyingly powerful. Drawing attention by fighting one of those monsters would be a suicide he couldn't afford while carrying the Moon Emperor. The base should be just ahead, he thought, clinging to that hope. But when they reached it, Ye Tian stopped dead. The compound was a ruin. A massive crater yawned where the base had stood, and the spatial rift at its center had been sealed by an enormous array. Around that sealed rift, countless ferocious beasts were hammering at the barrier, snarling and colliding against the array in waves. The sight left Ye Tian numb. The sealing formation held for now, but the relentless pressure of those monsters, some of them emperor level in their own right, made the air vibrate. If the array broke, whatever had come through the rift would be unleashed into the base. Ye Tian tightened his grip on the Moon Emperor and forced himself to move, panting as the realization sank in. They had arrived too late. The situation was desperate. The base had been overrun, and humanity had been forced to fall back to the far side of the planet. He was too late. "I can't get through," Ye Tian muttered, frustrated. His stealth talent was exceptional, but the spatial rift was sealed by a massive formation, a grand array that neither his ability nor any ordinary means could penetrate. Even if the people on the far side could open it for him, they wouldn't. Doing so would let the ferocious beasts flood through after them. Heaving a short, resigned breath, Ye Tian made a decision. There was no point lingering here. He had to find a safe place to recuperate and tend to the Moon Emperor's wounds. Left alone in his current state, Ye Tian knew he wouldn't be able to get anyone back through the array, but if the Moon Emperor recovered enough, perhaps he would find a way to return them both. After an uncertain span of time, Ye Tian arrived at a towering mountain and carved out a temporary cave. He set up a simple concealment formation around the entrance, then laid the Moon Emperor, covered in blood and exhaustion, inside. Only when he was sure the makeshift shelter held did Ye Tian let himself focus on the injuries. He watched the Moon Emperor's pale face, checking each wound with practiced, careful hands. The world outside might be collapsing, but here, for now, there was a small pocket of safety, and his priority was to see Yue mended so they could try to get back to the others. When Ye Tian peered closer, he saw the full extent of the damage. Emperor Yue's torso had been ripped almost in two, countless bones were shattered, and his internal organs were grievously mangled. Panic rose in him. He hurriedly fed the Moon Emperor a stream of potent healing elixirs and stayed at his side through the night. By morning, the worst of the injuries had crusted over, and the wounds were closing. At the Emperor level, recovery was astonishing. No ordinary person could have healed so quickly, even without a prodigious healing talent. The Moon Emperor opened his eyes at dawn. "Emperor Yue, you're awake!" Ye Tian cried with relief. Emperor Yue looked at him and asked weakly, "Ye Tian, did you save me?" Ye Tian put on a casual face. "I happened to come across you after you killed an Emperor-class ferocious beast and collapsed from exhaustion. I carried you away." Emperor Yue frowned, remembering the moment. "No, I could feel a spatial force constricting the void back then. Did you? You must have been so badly injured you were hallucinating," Emperor Yue muttered, unwilling to accept the implication. Ye Tian kept his mouth shut. He would never admit that his spatial talent, the trump card he hadn't mentioned, had been at work. Emperor Yue, the Moon Emperor, saw that Ye Tian wasn't going to confess, so she didn't press the issue. Instead, she turned her attention to healing. From her storage pouch, she produced an elixir the size of a dragon's eye, swallowed it in one gulp, and began to recover at a staggering rate, the kind of regeneration usually only seen in top-tier healers. Half an hour later, most of her injuries had closed. Only the deep, shadowed wounds inside her body still needed time to mend. They wouldn't heal in a hurry. Emperor Yue opened her eyes and asked, "Ye Tian, didn't you return to the base?" "I went back," Ye Tian replied, sounding helpless, but the base had been breached. The humans retreated to Earth, the space rift was sealed, and I couldn't get free back in. Emperor Yue showed no surprise, as if she had expected exactly that. Ye Tian leaned forward, curious. "What happened, Emperor Yue? You didn't fail to kill that beast that attacks souls, did you?" "No," the Moon Emperor said, his voice grave. "At first we had the upper hand. We killed that soul-attacking Emperor-level beast and cut down dozens of other Emperor-level monsters. We were even on the verge of finishing off the Emperor-level creature in that valley. Then disaster struck. The blood-eyed witch Emperor was slain by a beast that suddenly appeared and struck first. I was struck hard as well, and the Emperors were beaten back and forced to flee." Chapter 188. The Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor is dead? Ye Tian stared in disbelief. The founder of the Witch Temple, killed. What kind of monster could do that? "I don't know." The Moon Emperor shook his head. "But it was enormous, around 3,000 meters long. It burst out of the ground. One sweep of its tail killed the blood-eyed witch emperor, and a single claw wiped out more than a dozen emperors. If I hadn't used a defensive treasure to block one of its claws, I'd have been killed too. From its appearance, the Moon Emperor continued, the creature seemed related to dragons. Even if it isn't a true dragon, it's a dragon beast carrying dragon blood. A dragon? Ye Tian wasn't surprised dragons existed in the beast world. After all, Little Blood was a dragon. He asked what color was its hide. Black, the Moon Emperor answered. Ye Tian let out a small, relieved breath. If it was black, then it wasn't connected to Little Blood. He had been worried it might be a close relative of Xiao Blood. If so, dealing with it would be far more difficult. Emperor Yu had always been on good terms with Xiao Blood, but he had no desire to pick a fight with Xiao Blood's closest kin. Ye Tian asked, Emperor Yu, is there any way for you to go back now? The Moon Emperor shook his head. Not for the time being. If the spatial rift reopens, that beast will pour onto the earth. The consequences would be unimaginable. We can't risk it. Right now we can only take things one step at a time. I don't have a better solution. If that black monstrous thing attacks the rift, Ye Tian said, worry threading his voice, I'm afraid humanity won't be able to stop it. Don't be so quick to despair, the Moon Emperor replied. The Zhonghai Superbase has a trump card. That ferocious beast won't defeat us easily. After all, the rift hasn't been assaulted yet. That's proof enough. A trump card? What trump card? Ye Tian pressed. The Tower of the God of War, the Moon Emperor said. The God of War Tower? Ye Tian repeated, eyes narrowing as the memory surfaced. He had always assumed the tower at the Zhonghai Superbase existed only to aid human cultivation. Could it also be used offensively? Yes, the Moon Emperor said. Even though you're officially a member of the tower, your authority is low. When an officer's clearance reaches a certain level, they can use the God of War Tower to launch an attack. Right now, only 3 humans hold that permission. The Battle Axe Emperor, the Qin Emperor of the Qin sect, and the War Dragon Emperor. The latter has long stood guard over the tower and is second in strength only to the Battle Axe Emperor. The 3 emperors each get 1 chance to call down the tower's attack, the Moon Emperor went on. They may already have used one. Perhaps that's how the Black Beast was so badly wounded. That makes sense, Ye Tian said, his voice steady. No wonder that black monster's terrifying power only demolished the bases on its own side of the fierce beast world and didn't break through further. Humans had a trump card, the God of War Tower. Emperor Yu, Ye Tian asked, once the tower's 3 uses are spent, can it be used again? It can, the Moon Emperor replied, but it requires a 10-year recharge between uses. 20 years ago, the beasts smashed through to the edge of the earth. We couldn't push them back immediately because the tower's 3 charges had already been exhausted. It wasn't until 10 years ago, when those 3 charges became available again, that humanity struck back and forced the beasts back into the fierce beast world. Ye Tian clenched his jaw. If those 3 charges run out, resisting the beasts will become far more difficult. If they fail, the fighting will spill onto Earth, and worse, could sweep all the way to the Zhonghai Superbase. We have to grow stronger and fast, he said quietly. Cultivation, Ye Tian said without hesitation. He was about to begin when the Moon Emperor interrupted. Ye Tian, would you like to enter the Lunar God Pavilion to cultivate? The Lunar Pavilion, Ye Tian frowned. We can't get back to the Zhonghai Superbase. How would I possibly enter the Lunar Pavilion? The Moon Emperor smiled oddly. The Lunar Pavilion has been with me all along, he said easily. The so-called Lunar Pavilion of the Moon sect, that building everyone sees, is just a facade designed to hide the truth. The real Lunar Pavilion isn't that structure. Ye Tian blinked. What do you mean? The real Lunar Pavilion is on you. Ye Tian was stunned. Why are you doing this for me? He asked, suspicious but curious. For the first time, the Moon Emperor hesitated. His face flushed faintly, and there was an almost bashful tilt to his voice. Well, think of it as a chance, he murmured. A chance? Ye Tian didn't believe it. The Moon Emperor's sudden shyness, so unlike his usual imperial composure, almost girlish, only made Ye Tian more puzzled. Is this really the Moon Emperor? He wondered. What Ye Tian didn't know was that the chance the Moon Emperor mentioned was not merely an opportunity to cultivate. It was something far more personal, a marriage bond. Empress Yue had inherited the legacy of the ancient Yue sect, and with it came one of its most prized relics, the marriage treasure jade. Anyone who successfully refined the jade could sense who they were destined to marry. The last time Ye Tian saw the Empress return to the base, she noticed him as well. Using the jade, Empress Yu sensed that Ye Tian was the person she would marry. That discovery is why she allowed him to accompany her, otherwise she never would have. She was the sort of ruler who wouldn't let just anyone be that close to her. Even if it risked the mission's success, she wouldn't have permitted another's hand to guide hers. The Tomahawk Emperor and the others were baffled by the sudden, inexplicable change in the Moon Empress's attitude. The reason was exactly this, but they had no idea the marriage treasure jade existed, so they were left stunned and confused. Empress Yue, for her part, was neither at ease nor eager to announce the cause. Besides, her feelings for Ye Tian were only a faint curiosity then, a small liking, nothing approaching love. Ye Tian still felt his power was inadequate. Worrying that he wouldn't be able to protect himself in the coming war, the Moon Emperor decided to strengthen him first. He summoned the Lunar God Pavilion and offered Ye Tian a month of secluded cultivation. A small white jade pavilion appeared in the Moon Emperor's open palm. It looked like a 3-story structure at first, then expanded until it was 10 meters tall and detached from his hand. Ye Tian didn't hesitate. This was an opportunity he couldn't pass up, and he stepped inside. "I can only open the first level of the pavilion right now," the Moon Emperor said. "You may cultivate on the first floor." "All right," Ye Tian answered. He sat cross-legged and began to meditate, attempting to unlock his mind domain. Immediately, a stream of mysterious breath flowed into him, hastening the opening of the mind domain. "So fast," he thought, his face lighting up with joy. He switched on the threefold time acceleration and continued to cultivate. It didn't take long before Ye Tian had unlocked 1% of his mind domain, a rate many times faster than before. He ran the numbers in his head. Even the Moon Emperor had needed 3 years to fully open his deep mind domain. As a Shi-Ri level prodigy, Ye Tian figured he would normally need 6 or 7 months to reach 100%. With his 3x acceleration, that translated to just over 2 months in outside time, if he could stay that long. Unfortunately, he couldn't. The Moon God had warned him that unlocking the Moon God cabinet consumed enormous resources. He couldn't be overly greedy, so he settled for what he could get and focused on training. Days blurred as his cultivation surged. Before he knew it, a month had passed. Chapter 189. Ye Tian opened his eyes slowly, the last traces of his meditation fading as his cultivation cycle completed. When he rose, a startling fact was clear. He had opened 80% of his deep brain domain. He had entered the Lunar God Pavilion with only about 34% unlocked. In a single month inside the pavilion, he had advanced another 46%, pushing him straight to 80%. His physical power had surged as well. He now possessed the strength comparable to 8 dragons. He had been driven out of the Lunar God Pavilion and now found himself before the Moon Emperor. The Moon Emperor covered his mouth with a pale hand, his face a mask of disbelief. "Ye Tian, your cultivation," he managed. Before this, Ye Tian had only been a little over 30% into the deep brain domain. To reach 80% in only 1 month inside the pavilion was almost inconceivable. What kind of talent could produce such a leap? Ye Tian could only give a modest answer. "I have good talent," he said. "My cultivation speed is faster." Emperor Yue studied Ye Tian closely and had already guessed that his talent was exceptional, likely even surpassing Hui Yue's. She didn't press the matter, though. She didn't want to make him uncomfortable. Seemingly provoked by Ye Tian's presence, the Moon Emperor withdrew to continue her own cultivation. In the days that followed, Ye Tian opened his deep mind domain and continued to refine the Star Slash. The Star Slash was a legendary sword technique. Once fully mastered, it would bring a dramatic increase in power. To train it, Ye Tian often went out to hunt fierce beasts, deliberately testing himself against powerful saint-grade creatures. He refused to rely on his Upanishad's power talent, instead using only his half-complete Star Slash against them. At first, several of those saint-grade beasts could withstand a handful of his strikes, but in the end, he felled an extremely powerful saint-grade beast with a single blow. Half a month later, the star slash was finally beginning to take shape. My strength should be enough to match someone at level 36, right? Ye Tian thought. Ye Tian's power multiplied in stages. His base physical strength alone was the equivalent of 8 dragon strength. After his Yuan force awakened, that doubled to 16. Reaching the Upanishad's tier amplified that by another factor of 100, and then the entry-level legendary sword technique Star Chopping added a final 30-fold boost. Multiply them together, and his single strongest strike reached 48,000 dragon strength. To put that in perspective, a newly promoted Emperor-level cultivator typically has only about 100 dragon strength in raw physical power, 200 after a Yuan force increase. Even compared to that boosted figure, Ye Tian's attack is astronomical. It is 480 times the raw 100-point baseline, and still 240 times greater than the 200-point post-Yuan force level. In short, he could easily overwhelm an ordinary Emperor-level opponent. That said, there remained a vast gulf between Ye Tian and the true emperors of the realm. He was still far weaker than the Tomahawk Emperor, whose power stood on an entirely different plane. From the Moon Emperor, Ye Tian learned that, among the 36 emperors, the Tomahawk Emperor's attack power exceeded 1 million dragons, roughly 1.2 million dragons in total. That number came from several multipliers. The Tomahawk Emperor's base physical strength was equivalent to 300 dragons. The power of the Upanishads had been amplified 100-fold. The consummation-grade Golden Axe technique was multiplied 20 times, and his Yuan force had doubled. Altogether, they produced that staggering figure. It was obvious Ye Tian was far from reaching the Tomahawk Emperor's level. Still, compared to the weaker members of the 36, he was by no means powerless. The lesser emperors barely reached attack values of 40 to 50,000 dragons. Ye Tian's defense and speed weren't on par with the 36 either, but with his top talents in space and time, he could still kill a weaker emperor. Quietly, Ye Tian set his next goal: ascend to emperor rank and become the first emperor of the Zhonghai superbase. Ye Tian returned from the hunt and glanced over at Emperor Yu. The Moon Emperor looked much better. His injuries had healed, even the dark wound was gone, and his aura was noticeably stronger. The time spent in retreat had clearly done him good. "You're back," Emperor Yue said, opening his eyes and ending his cultivation. Ye Tian nodded. "I brought back meat from a red sheep beast. We can have braised lamb tonight." Eating regularly had become a habit for Ye Tian. Emperor Yue hadn't cared much for food at first, but after watching Ye Tian eat day after day, he'd started joining him. "Good," the Moon Emperor replied, a faint smile touching his lips. After dinner, Emperor Yue's expression turned serious. "Ye Tian, there's something I need your help with." "What is it?" Ye Tian asked, noting the gravity in his tone. "In 3 days I will attempt to temper my heavenly moon spirit body," Emperor Yue said, biting his lip. "Can you protect me while I undergo it?" Ye Tian didn't hesitate. "Yes," the Moon Emperor hurriedly explained. "This retreat of mine isn't ordinary. I have to enter the heavenly dome to meditate, and while I'm up there we may encounter flying beasts, possibly even emperor-level beasts." "Why do you need to retreat above the heavenly dome?" Ye Tian asked, puzzled. "Because of the special requirements of emperor-level cultivation." The Moon Emperor went on to explain. "At the holy level, you open the brain domain. At the emperor level, you must absorb special energies to refine your body and break its limits. Each time you break a limit, you gain 100 dragon powers. Tomahawk Emperor has broken his physical limit twice, and so have I. There are generally several ways to break a bodily limit. One is to absorb energy that corresponds to your innate attribute. For example, I possess an Upanishad-level lunar god talent, which lets me absorb moon force and use it to refine my body. As far as I know, Tomahawk Emperor has no elemental talent. He can only rely on Yuan Qi, primordial energy, to refine his body and shatter the limit. At the Emperor level, the Tomahawk Emperor's advancement was actually rather slow. Many emperors had already completed the 3rd limit breakthrough, while he was still struggling through it. What made him so dominant at the Zhonghai superbase, though, was not speed of progression, but talent stacking. His supreme Tomahawk talent could be combined with an Upanishad-type power talent, and the two together made him unrivaled. So, Ye Tian asked. If someone had a fire-type talent, couldn't they use fire to temper their body? The Moon Emperor nodded. Exactly. Fire talents can use flame to temper the body, and water talents can use water to temper the body. But unless the talent is exceptionally strong in that attribute, the tempering effect won't be as effective as simply using yuan qi to refine the body. The abilities that can rapidly reshape a cultivator's physique are the Upanishad attribute talents. Only those can truly transmute a body into an innate element form, like an innate fire spirit body, innate water spirit body, or innate moon spirit body. What if someone possessed multiple Upanishad's attributes? What would the benefits be? Ye Tian asked, curiosity sharp in his voice. The Moon Emperor's eyes widened. He stared at Ye Tian in disbelief. How could anyone who already has an Upanishad's attribute, something so rare, almost heaven-defying, also have more? He shook his head. Still, if it did happen, that person's cultivation would skyrocket. Even a mystical-level attribute can only draw so much attribute energy to temper the body. As you advance, that supply becomes limited and progress slows. Take me. I'm tempering my body with lunar force now, and it's painfully slow compared to the early stages. He leaned forward. If someone had multiple Upanishads talents, fire, water, moon, for example, they could use them in sequence. First use fire to temper the body, then water to temper further, then moon to push past another barrier. You could break one limit after another far faster than relying on a single attribute. It hit Ye Tian like a thunderclap. Emperor Yue's words revealed a vast path he hadn't seen before. Chapter 190. Until now, Ye Tian had always dismissed elemental talents, fire, water, and the like, as relatively useless, so he hadn't bothered copying many of them. If he had, it wouldn't have been hard to piece together a few Upanishads talents. Now, however, he finally saw their value. Those attribute talents could accelerate cultivation at the Emperor level, and paired with his Shi-Ri level cultivation talent, the moment he breached the Emperor level, he would very likely leave everyone else behind and claim first place in the Zhonghai Super Base. He made his decision. First copy the Moon Emperor's Upanishads, the Lunar God talent. Ye Tian copied the Lunar God talent in silence. 3 days passed in the stillness. On the appointed day, the Beast World's moon hung unusually bright in the sky, far more luminous than it had been before. The Moon Emperor had said this was the Moon Day, the brightest night of the year, when the moon force swelled to many times its usual strength. The moon's power on the ground could be absorbed, but it was far too weak for the Moon Emperor to cultivate the innate heavenly moon spirit body. She had to ascend to the heavenly dome, where the moon force was much less diminished and several times more concentrated than on the surface. The problem was that on full moon days, many fierce beasts that fed on moon power also swarmed into the heavenly dome. If they found the Moon Emperor, they would attack. She would therefore need protection while she cultivated, and she wasn't willing to give up this chance. If she succeeded in forming the heavenly moon spirit body, her cultivation speed would skyrocket. She might break the third physical limit and gain strength comparable to the Tomahawk Emperor. Sending someone like Ye Tian to guard her, however, would put him at risk of being affected by the moon force during the process. Let's go up, the Moon Emperor said, staring at the moon above the heavenly dome. Ye Tian couldn't help but gulp. They climbed until the air thinned and the world fell away beneath them, rising up through the atmosphere until they reached the outer edge of the sky. But when Ye Tian tried to go any higher, he couldn't. No matter what he did, he could not break free. The Moon Emperor, Emperor Yue, simply shook his head. "Don't bother," he said. "There's no way to leave the ferocious beast world." Emperor Yue's explanation made things clear to Ye Tian. The so-called beast world was not a pocket realm at all, but a vast planet, unimaginably large. From their vantage point, they could see only the sweep of its surface, an endless curve that hinted at the planet's true scale without revealing it in full. The surface was blanketed by layer upon layer of faint, membranous veils, and even cultivators at the Emperor rank could not pierce them. He pointed out that a similar membrane now surrounds Earth. That barrier only formed after the revival of Yuan Qi. More than a century ago, Earth had no such defense. The emperors theorized that these membranes are a planet's self-protective mechanism, a defensive faculty unique to worlds suffused with yuan qi. But that method had become a chain as well. Unless one's power exceeded the emperor rank, there was no way to leave their homeworld except by taking a space rift. There simply was no other option. Ye Tian, I'm starting, the Moon Emperor warned. If I lose control, don't try to save me. Interrupt my breakthrough instead. Don't worry, nothing will happen, Ye Tian said with a faint smile. The Moon Emperor visibly relaxed. He sat cross-legged and activated his lunar god talent. With a low rumble, a perfect moon rose behind him, as if a small moon had been summoned into being, the sign of an advanced, scripture-level lunar god talent. The surrounding moon essence condensed under its influence, turning into pure moon force that poured over the Moon Emperor's body, slowly reshaping him into a heavenly moon spirit body. Ye Tian drew his attention back and began scanning the area. It didn't take long before a bat-like saint-rank Ferroc Ios beast appeared, drawn by the dense moon energy surrounding the Moon Emperor. Die! Ye Tian swept his sword in a single motion. The saint-grade beast disintegrated instantly, its body collapsing into a corpse that floated up into the heavenly dome. One after another, more saint-grade beasts poured in, and every time Ye Tian attacked, they fell in batches. Occasionally, an imperial-grade beast blundered into the fray as well, but none of them were a match for him and were cut down with ease. Half an hour passed. The aura around the Moon Emperor had strengthened considerably, but it was still far from allowing cultivation of the heavenly moon spirit body. After stealing one quick look at the Moon Emperor, Ye Tian turned his attention back to the battlefield. He activated his blood-eating talent and began draining the beast's blood to recover the energy he had expended. Suddenly, an aura snapped into focus, an emperor-level beast. It moved with terrifying speed, a streak of crimson light tearing across the field. Ye Tian's face grew serious. An emperor-grade beast, its power nearly rivaling a 36th-rank emperor. He wasn't afraid of an emperor-level ferocious beast. He could handle those. But if he couldn't kill it quickly, it would inevitably interfere with the Moon Emperor's ascension. Over time, he had grown an inexplicable fondness for the Moon Emperor. He didn't want to see him harmed. Disturb the Moon Emperor's promotion, and you die, he snarled. Ye Tian's right hand was empty. The air itself shivered, and the void seemed to freeze. The beast's speed dropped drastically, as if an invisible fetter had been clamped around it. He unleashed his techniques one after another. Upanishad's power, god-level speed, star chop. The brilliant blade force cleaved through time and space, striking the emperor-level beast and gouging a huge trench along its flank. It was thrown backward by the impact. The creature's scales were tough, too tough it seemed, but Ye Tian didn't hesitate. Slash! Break! He cried, drawing the Morning Star sword and bringing it down in a single, brutal arc. The sword bit through the scale armor. In the next instant, the plates exploded apart, spraying splinters and dust, and the pale flesh underneath was exposed, seared and bleeding. The Emperor-class beast tried to kill Ye Tian with a single swipe of its tail, but he slipped free using his time talent. In an instant, the creature's hardened scales splintered beneath his sword. Dozens of precise strikes later, the beast's life was ended. What seemed drawn out actually passed in only a few breaths. It had been exceptionally unlucky. If it had run into one of those 36 tyrant emperors, it might have escaped, but Ye Tian's methods were overwhelming. There was no hope of survival. After that, there were no more assaults from emperor-class beasts. The fierce beast world was vast, and true emperors were rare. They didn't just happen to be nearby. The monsters that showed up afterward were mostly saint-level, far less formidable. A few more hours slid by, and the moon began to sink toward the horizon. Then something happened. A brilliant radiance blossomed around the Moon Emperor. Moonlight coalesced into her, countless lunar energies pouring into her body. Her breathing deepened, and her presence swelled. In that moment, she looked every inch a true moon goddess. Ye Tian could only stare, speechless. So beautiful, he managed to whisper, and even that felt inadequate. The Moon Emperor was breathtaking. He could tell her innate moon spirit body had just finished its cultivation. The light around her faded, the moon spirit settling back into its true form as the moon force drew in and hid within her. Ye Tian, you've worked hard, she said, rising to her feet. Her gaze swept the clearing. Scattered around them lay the carcasses of countless fierce beasts, some even at the Emperor level. From the wounds and the positions of the bodies, it was clear Ye Tian had fought a brutal battle, yet not a single beast had managed to touch her or disrupt her cultivation. The realization moved Emperor Yu. She found herself privately thinking, perhaps he really would make a fine husband. Chapter 191. The Moon Emperor had already cultivated the heavenly moon spirit body. He hadn't yet broken the third physical limit, but he no longer needed to remain inside the heavenly dome. He could descend and work on the third limit from below. "Let's go down," the Moon Emperor said. "Good." Ye Tian followed Emperor Yue as they flew down and returned quickly to the temporary cave mansion where Ye Tian had been staying. Over the next few days, the Moon Emperor went into seclusion to impact the third physical limit. He didn't require a guard. Ye Tian, meanwhile, continued to expand his brain domain. He still carried several treasures that had been useless while he was cultivating in the Lunar God Pavilion. Now he planned to expend them all and push his cultivation as far as he could. On the third day, the Moon Emperor broke through. He successfully passed the third physical limit, and his strength rose dramatically, placing him on par with the Tomahawk Emperor. Ye Tian had originally intended to train alongside the Moon Emperor all the way to the Emperor level, but plans, as always, were subject to change. "Ye Tian, the Tomahawk Emperor sent word. Something's wrong in the beast world. The beasts have retreated and the black beast is gone. The Tomahawk Emperor is preparing to re-establish a base there. We can return." The Moon Emperor announced. "Can I go back?" Ye Tian asked. Relief and unease washed over him at once. Relief, because he would finally be out of that savage realm. Unease, because returning meant being separated from the Moon Emperor. He had grown used to the Emperor's presence. The idea of parting from him tightened his chest. Even if they could still meet after returning, their stations were worlds apart. The Moon Emperor was an imperial-level cultivator, his strength rivaling great emperors like the Tomahawk Emperor. He was the suzerain of the Luna sect, leader of the Lunar God sect, one of the four great powers, and his status was exalted. Ye Tian, by contrast, was only a junior beneath that kind of eminence, and the thought of the gulf between them made him quietly uneasy. Even if he was only at the saint level, and his power was comparable only to the weaker members of the 36 emperors, he was still a saint. And the heavenly pavilion he had founded was tiny, barely more than a local band. It wasn't even recognized as an official force. If he returned to the Zhonghai superbase, he knew he couldn't stay close to the Moon Emperor the way they were now. Emperor Yue seemed to be thinking the same thing. A faint shadow of loss crossed his face. For a long time, neither of them said anything. Finally, the Moon Emperor spoke. "Ye Tian, you're always welcome at the Lunar God sect as my guest. Or, if you prefer, come and find me." He pushed the words out as if they cost him everything. His voice shook, and his body trembled with the effort. "I will," Ye Tian replied without hesitation, smiling. "I'll come find you." He felt a warm certainty settle over him. The invitation could only have been offered out of genuine feeling. It was all the more meaningful because of the Lunar God sect's rules. Men were absolutely forbidden inside. Even a man who married a female disciple and joined the sect's peripheral forces could not set foot within the Lunar God sect itself. For the Moon Emperor to say what he had said, despite those rules, proved how strongly he felt. Only on the day of the Lunar God sect's grand ceremony did other emperors get the chance to enter the sect. Guests could come then, but Ye Tian's situation was different. He could come and go as he pleased. In fact, he was the only one who could visit the Moon Emperor alone. "Then I'll be waiting for you," the Moon Emperor said, smiling. The expression on his face was bright and warm, nothing like the usual frosty demeanor that made him seem as unreachable as some cold moon goddess. For the first time, the Moon Emperor looked almost ordinary, almost human. Ye Tian reminded himself of the reason he had been holding back. He was currently the top-ranked cultivator at the Zhonghai superbase, and in many ways, he could have taken the Moon Emperor into his arms right now. But he was only saint rank. If he confessed his feelings now, they would be bound together in everyone's eyes. The Moon Emperor might accept it, might even be pleased, but what would the rest of the Zhonghai superbase say? They would sneer that Ye Tian was just a pampered pretty boy clinging to the Moon Emperor and fill the halls with ugly gossip. He didn't mind being talked about himself, but he would never allow anyone to insult the Moon Emperor. He wanted to declare himself only when he could do so from a position of absolute strength. Not now. Day 2. Ye Tian and the Moon Emperor returned to the rift. Not far from the crack in space, a brand new base was already taking shape. Senior formation mages and specialists in the Morningstar Array were laying out a massive formation. Everything pointed to the new outpost being finished before long. When the Moon Emperor reappeared, a collective exhale spread through the crowd. There had been too many losses lately. The fall of the Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor had devastated the morale at the Zhonghai Superbase, and the Witch God Temple, already crippled by the losses of the Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor and the Tyrannosaurus Emperor, was teetering on the brink of dropping out of the ranks of the four great powers. The Moon Emperor's disappearance had thrown the Moon God sect into chaos. Many had assumed he was dead. Without him, the Moon God sect, whose foundations were already shaky, risked losing its status as a top power and being reduced to just another large faction. Fortunately, the Moon Empress had returned safely, and everyone in the Moon God sect breathed a collective sigh of relief. Ye Tian went largely unnoticed at first, until the Empress announced that he would be listed as the sect's most honored guest. From then on, he could enter the Moon God sect whenever he pleased without going through formalities, and he was required to notify her in advance whenever he planned a visit. That announcement made Ye Tian suddenly very popular. He became the target of attention from many men in the sect, and even several women grew openly jealous. In short, Ye Tian was back in the spotlight. At Zhonghai Superbase, Ye Tian had barely settled in when Feng Ji came by his quarters for tea. It was their first real conversation since his return. Ye Tian, Feng Ji said with a half grin, "I never expected you to come back alive. Not that I'm cursing you. You're incredible. So many emperors have fallen, but you made it through. Your stealth talent must be unparalleled." A man called Windblood snorted, "All luck." Ye Tian smiled without correcting them. If survival had rested solely on his supposed top stealth talent, he wouldn't be able to count the number of times he'd already died. They were chatting quietly when Feng Ji suddenly leaned in and lowered his voice. "Ye Tian, what's your relationship with the Moon Emperor? She lets you enter the Moon God sect whenever you like. No one can stop you. Do you realize you're the only man in the entire Zhonghai Superbase who gets treated like that?" Ye Tian grinned and glanced away, playing it up. Maybe the Moon Emperor has taken a fancy to me. He wasn't joking, he was telling the truth. But Feng Ji rolled his eyes. "Please, you're not even as handsome as me. You think that's enough to make the Moon Emperor fall for you?" He snorted. "Besides, I heard Emperor Yue isn't interested in men. I also heard she was badly wounded by some terrible beast and disappeared afterwards. Did she treat you like this because you saved her?" Feng Ji had clearly spun the rumor into a more dramatic story. Ye Tian sighed, helpless but resigned. "All right, yes, I did save the Moon Emperor." Feng Ji's smirk returned. "See? I knew it." Then his expression shifted. The teasing faded and something harder took its place. He looked at Ye Tian with sudden seriousness. "Ye Tian, do you know how many emperors died this tea? Me? I don't know." Ye Tian shook his head. He had only just returned and didn't have the full picture. "The exact numbers haven't been released yet, but I've heard that about 40% of the emperors were killed. 16 of the 36 emperors have fallen." Windblood sighed. With so many emperors gone, the losses at the Zhonghai Superbase were even worse than those from the war 10 or 20 years ago. Unless they had a decade of steady rebuilding, Zhonghai would never return to its former peak strength. Chapter 192. 16 of the 36 emperors are dead? Ye Tian drew a breath. The loss was staggering. It might be survivable to lose a few ordinary emperors, but the 36 emperors were the pillars of the Zhonghai Superbase. The death of even one would be a serious blow. 16 at once was catastrophic. "Yes," Windkiller Blood said, taking a sip of tea. "They'll have to reorganize the 36, but the replacements will be weaker. They won't match the quality of the originals." Windkiller Blood, Fierce Beast Retreat. What's the situation? Ye Tian asked, turning to both of them. He was curious, but he didn't ask the Moon Emperor. She must be overwhelmed right now. With so many emperors gone, her responsibilities would be immense. He didn't want to trouble her with questions at a time like this. I don't know for sure, Wind said. All I've heard is there's some treasure hidden in the fierce beast world. A lot of fierce beasts have gone after it, even that black fierce beast that's killed emperors before. No one knows the exact situation. Human forces are badly weakened right now, so nobody dares risk an inquiry. If we lose it again, this mid-sea superbase won't hold. Ye Tian pictured artifacts on the scale of the God of War monument or the heavenly tablet of the enlightened Tao. Only treasures of that magnitude could drive an emperor-level fierce beast to fight and kill for them. He cursed inwardly. If he were stronger, he would have loved nothing more than to snatch it for himself. As it stood, though, he was still too weak. After parting ways with Wind and Blood, Ye Tian returned to the heavenly pavilion. It had prospered while he was away. New masters had emerged, and many powerful martial artists had been cultivated. His younger sister, Ye Yu, had already reached king-level strength. Even without Ye Tian, the heavenly pavilion, now with a king level at its core, remained a respectable, if still modest, force. After delivering the huge cache of fierce beast blood he'd collected in the beast world to his sister Ye Yu and giving her a few instructions, Ye Tian returned home. He had barely stepped inside when he noticed that Xiao Blood had already awakened from his long sleep. "Ha ha, master! Look at me! I'm so powerful now." Xiao Blood crowed the moment he saw Ye Tian, his voice full of excited pride. "Is that so?" Ye Tian said with a sly smile. Then, abruptly, space imprisonment. With a gesture, he activated his spatial talent. The surrounding void seemed to freeze, a cold silence wrapped around Xiao Blood like invisible chains. Though Xiao Blood's cultivation had reached king rank ultimate and his talent was remarkable, he had no hope of breaking out of the sealed space. What's happening? Why can't I move?" Xiao Blood's voice chimed directly in Ye Tian's mind, panicked. "You're only at the king level," Ye Tian replied, deliberately teasing him. "Your master and I will be emperor rank soon. I just used a little trick. You can't move. Do you still feel so powerful now?" "Oh no, master, are you already that strong?" Xiao Blood protested, flustered. "I've already become a young battle-blood dragon, and my talent has fully metamorphosed. Why am I still so weak?" Xiao Blood was completely crushed. Ye Tian reached out and patted his head. "Xiao Blood, you're almost unbeatable among the royal ranks. Don't blame yourself. Your opponent was just stronger this time. Not that you're weak." "That's right," Xiao Blood snapped indignantly, trying to lift his spirits. "I told you I'm doing great. How could I be weak?" Ye Tian smiled and stroked his cheek. "Keep training, and you'll grow into an unrivaled dragon. Those emperor-level beasts aren't even worthy of your attention." Xiao Blood bobbed his head eagerly, eyes shining as he agreed. Ye Tian wasn't flattering him. Xiao Blood really was exceptional. He had already assessed the creature's potential. After absorbing the water dragon ball, Xiao Blood had undergone a complete metamorphosis, and his talent had risen dramatically. Species: Battle Blood Dragon, Bloodline Talent, Sunrise Level Strength, Talent, Pseudo-Upanishads 70%, Defense Talent, Pseudo-Upanishads 60%, Speed Talent, Top Blood Devouring Talent, Pseudo-Upanishads 80%, Flying Talent, Top Dragon Flame, Talent, Top Healing Talent, Top Dragon Yin Talent, Top Blood and Bone Talent, High Dragon Soul Talent, Top. All of the creature's talents are at or above the top tier. Strength, Defense, and the Blood-Devouring Talent have already reached the Pseudo-Upanishads level. With only a little more effort, they could become true Upanishads talents. Several of the other top-level talents also have the potential to advance to Upanishads. It would take only a small amount of concentrated training for the little blood to grasp the Upanishads fully. With these 10 brilliant and powerful talents, the little blood already outclasses most emperor-level ferocious beasts many times over, and its future potential is in a completely different league. Still, Ye Tian kept his praise measured. He didn't want to heap on compliments and let the creature get too full of itself. After a few days at home, Ye Tian was ready to go to the beast world to seek out other Upanishads talents and prepare for emperor-level cultivation. If he stayed at the Zhonghai Superbase, he wouldn't be able to copy several of those talents anyway. Before leaving, he wanted to pay a visit to the Moon Empress Yue and inform her of his plans. He arrived at the gate of the lunar sect. 2 female disciples stepped forward and blocked his way. "No men are allowed beyond this point," one of them announced sternly. "My name is Ye Tian," he said. "I'm here to see the Moon Empress." At the name, the 2 women froze, then stared at him in surprise. "Ye Tian?" they exclaimed. His reputation had preceded him. They'd been talking about him constantly. "It really is him. I saw his portrait. I just didn't recognize him at first." Once they were certain of his identity, they dared not refuse. One of the disciples stepped aside and led Ye Tian into the sect. Many of the lunar god sect's female disciples watched Ye Tian and whispered among themselves, but he paid them no attention. His expression was cool and indifferent. From the upper balcony, the Sunset Moon Saintess and her attendant maidens also glanced over and saw him striding toward the palace of the lunar sect leader. The Sunset Moon Saintess's beautiful eyes followed him with curiosity. Not long ago, Ye Tian had been on the same level as her. She remembered how he had once assisted her in subduing a ferocious beast, and she had assumed his strength was inferior. Nobody expected how quickly he would rise. He shot up to 7th on the king's list with 7-star king-level power, then ascended to saint level, and shortly after vaulted to great saint level, even surpassing Wind and Blood. He had become the most powerful young man of his generation at the Zhonghai super base. No one had expected Ye Tian to be swept straight into the emperor ranks, let alone to gain the personal favor of the Moon Emperor himself. The Moon Emperor even made an exception and had Ye Tian admitted to the Moon God sect. The decision unleashed a storm throughout the sect. Many elders had protested fiercely, but the Moon Emperor crushed their opposition with overwhelming authority and settled the matter himself. The Sunset Moon Saintess, of course, knew everything that had happened. Yet she still seemed dazed, as if she hadn't fully absorbed the implications. Ye Tian, who had once been a peer to her, now appeared to stand above her in status. "Saintess," a maid asked hesitantly, "why is the Moon Emperor so favorable to Ye Tian?" The Sunset Moon Saintess only murmured, "I don't know for certain. No one really knows what the Moon Emperor is thinking. Perhaps it's as the rumors say, Ye Tian saved Emperor Yue's life, and Emperor Yue is deeply grateful." But was that really the whole truth? Even if he'd had the mercy to spare his life, he could have at least offered some extra rewards. Why then, grant Ye Tian unrestricted access to the lunar god sect and openly flout the rules set by the Moon Emperor himself? It made no sense. Chapter 193, The Luna Sect, Moon God Temple. The Moon Emperor made her residence in the temple and normally cultivated there in solitude. Even the sect's disciples were forbidden to enter. Today, however, Ye Tian had been allowed inside. They sat together in the secluded chamber. "Ye Tian, I'm so glad you came," the Moon Emperor said, smiling in a way Ye Tian hadn't seen for a long time. Lately she had been overwhelmed, managing the backlog of affairs in the Moon God sect, coping with the recent downfalls of several emperors, and, as one of the 36 emperors, handling delicate relations with the other great powers. Even an emperor could feel exhausted. Yet at this moment, with Ye Tian before her, some of that weariness seemed to lift. "I'm very happy to see you too, Emperor Yue," Ye Tian replied, grinning. The Moon Emperor's expression softened. She fidgeted with the hem of her robe and spoke a little nervously. "Don't call me Moon Emperor. You can call me Yue." "All right, then I'll call you Yue from now on." Ye Tian knew the Moon Emperor's true name was Xiao Yue, but nobody dared address her by it. Only he had been granted permission to use the intimate diminutive, and that small allowance narrowed the distance between them more than either of them would admit. They talked for hours, drifting from the Moon Emperor's recent days to cultivation methods, to memories of the past. Conversation flowed easily between them, sometimes light and teasing, sometimes serious and quiet. After a while, Ye Tian grew more matter-of-fact. "Yue, I'm going back into the wildlands of beasts. I'll stay there for a while." "You can't." The Moon Emperor's concern was immediate. "It's far too dangerous out there." "Don't worry." Ye Tian gave her a steady look. "I have a talent for moving unseen, and I know many ways to keep myself alive. Besides, my goal is to break into the Emperor realm, As soon as I reach that level, I'll come back. With that strength, I'll be able to truly protect you. Then I'll wait for you to come back and protect me, she said, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Without thinking, Ye Tian found himself taking the Moon Emperor's hand. The Moon Emperor didn't pull away, he let Ye Tian hold it. For a moment their hearts seemed to touch. A brief, mutual recognition passed between them. Soon after, Ye Tian released his hand and left. The next day he departed Zhonghai Superbase and slipped through the 5-star spatial rift into the fierce beast world on the other side. He didn't show off. Instead, he quietly activated his top-tier stealth talent and began scanning for Upanishads-level attribute talents. The beast world was enormous, teeming with powerful life. Many dangerous creatures there carried Upanishads-tier attributes. As he probed deeper, Ye Tian quickly picked up a signal, an Emperor-level fierce beast with an Upanishads-level fire domain talent. It was a fire phoenix. Its known abilities were clear. Species, fire phoenix, bloodline talent, Huiyu, flying talent, top, fire talent, Upanishads, defense talent, top. A fire phoenix with an Upanishads fire talent like that ranked among the stronger Emperor-level beasts, but it had not yet reached the power of a 36th Emperor. After copying the Aoi-grade fire domain talent from the fire phoenix, Ye Tian killed the beast. That alone removed one more Emperor-level threat to humanity. He then found a secluded place and fused the Upanishads-level fire domain talent into himself. Once the fusion was complete, Ye Tian began searching for other Upanishads-level talents. 3 days later, he located another Emperor-level fierce beast, a wind beast, whose talent breakdown read like a dangerous combination. Bloodline talent, Huiyu, strength talent, top, storm talent, Upanishads level, speed talent, pseudo-Upanishads, 30%, defense talent, primary. Although its raw strength wasn't exceptional for an Emperor beast, it was still well above the average, and its Upanishads-level storm talent could summon storms powerful, enough to level a super base if left unchecked. Ye Tian copied that storm talent, struck, and the wind beast barely had time to react. With only a primary defense talent, it offered no real resistance and died from a single blow. After fusing the Upanishad storm talent, Ye Tian stopped actively hunting for other Upanishads-grade talents. He had already used up his 2 replication opportunities and now had to wait another half-month for the replication talent to cool down. So he set up a temporary cave dwelling and entered seclusion, devoting himself to cultivation and the expansion of his deep brain domain. Every time he copied 2 Upanishads talents, he fell into a 15-day retreat while the replication ability recharged. Time slipped by in that rhythm, and before he noticed, 5 months had already gone past. Although his search for higher Upanishads talents had eaten into a lot of time, his cultivation nevertheless surged. He had opened 90% of the deep brain domain, drawing close to the saint-grade extreme, and in the process had accumulated a substantial number of Upanishads talents. Speed talent, God level, water cover talent, Upanishads, fire domain talent, earth, thorn talent, Upanishads, vine talent, storm talent, lunar talent. Ye Tian had now collected 9 talents at the Upanishads level and 1 God level talent. On paper, that should have been more than enough. Still, he wasn't satisfied. He wanted to push another fusion up to God level. But now he faced a painful choice. One option was straightforward: fuse his water cover talent with his fire domain talent to create a single God level ability that combined the water and fire Upanishads. The other option was far more ambitious: combine water, fire, earth, thorn, and vine, together with an Upanishad's gold talent to form a 5 elements God level talent. The problem was that the first fusion might permanently close the door on the second. If he used water and fire to make a 2-element God talent now, he might never be able to assemble the full 5 elements God talent later. He stood at a crossroads, weighing which path to take. That uncertainty, the fear of burning a bridge he might need, was why he hesitated. There was no denying it. Even among divine-grade talents, there were great differences. A dual-element water and fire divine talent would always fall short of a true 5-element divine talent. He only had 1 golden Upanishads talent, too rare to just throw away. After thinking it over, Ye Tian made up his mind. He hadn't yet stepped into the Emperor tier. Even if he fused the Water Shield and Fire Domain talents now into a Water and Fire Divine Grade talent, it wouldn't improve his power by much. There was no reason to rush. Having decided, Ye Tian resumed his search for the Golden Upanishad's talent. Such talents were extraordinarily rare and often a matter of luck, but he hoped he might find one soon. 10 days passed with nothing, no Golden Upanishads, not even a single Golden Sect Peak talent. Then, unexpectedly, he came across a different, very useful talent entry. Species, Nightmare Beast, Bloodline Talent, Top Tier, Hypnotic Talent, Top Tier, Speed Talent, Advanced, Feign Death Talent, Top Tier. Ye Tian stared in surprise. Despite those extraordinary traits, high bloodline, powerful hypnotic ability, and a mastery of feigning death, the beast's overall strength was only at the very top tier of ferocious beasts. The mismatch between its talents and its current combat rating puzzled him. The talents of hypnosis and suspended animation, both extremely rare, flared before him. "Copy," he said, and then, without hesitation, "Copy." Again, Ye Tian duplicated them both. With those powers secured, he moved quickly. He slit the Nightmare Beast's throat, ending it before it could do more harm. A creature that could hypnotize humans could siphon vast amounts of intelligence. If it ever found an artifact that amplified bloodly, Ni talents, it would become an actual nightmare for humanity, exactly what its name promised. He would not let that happen. Chapter 194, Hypnotic Talent, Fusion. Fake Death Talent, Fusion. Ye Tian fused the two talents one after the other, absorbing them into himself. The Fake Death ability, more accurately a suspended animation talent, could be useful in certain situations. It shut down all outward signs of life, making his breathing and pulse drop to near zero, so he appeared completely dead. Against most human enemies, that kind of ruse could buy him time or let him escape scrutiny. But it was useless among fierce beasts. After a fight, beasts eat corpses. Pretending to be dead wouldn't save him from being devoured. That limitation made Ye Tian value the other talent far more. The hypnotic ability was extremely practical. He could put beasts under a trance and question them, extracting their knowledge, for example, where they'd seen Upanishads or where gold-level talents and treasures were hidden. That kind of intelligence was priceless. Most low-grade fierce beasts were little more than instinct-driven animals and couldn't be questioned. Those at holy grade and above, however, usually possessed enough intelligence to answer questions. Interrogating them was far quicker than Ye Tian's aimless solo search for the Upanishad's golden grade talent. Gliding through the air, Ye Tian kept an eye out for any holy grade beasts. Before long, a saint-grade creature came into view, a holy zebra. He activated his hypnotic talent. A shimmering influence washed over the zebra and subdued it instantly. Reaching into the beast's mind with his divine consciousness, Ye Tian asked, "Do you know where the mysterious golden-grade gifted beasts from the Upanishads are?" The zebra's consciousness replied with a single wave. "I don't know." Ye Tian frowned. He was a little disappointed, but not surprised. If the zebra had known the location, he would have been. He tried asking more questions, but the saint-grade zebra beast knew almost nothing. In this brutal world of fierce beasts, a saint-grade creature's awareness rarely extended beyond its own little territory. It couldn't touch many secrets. The zebra answered none of the things Ye Tian wanted to know. When the answers proved worthless, Ye Tian killed it with his bare hands and went back to hunting for a better target. A day later, he was growing impatient. Saint-grade beasts only ever seemed to know the affairs of their immediate area. They offered no real intelligence about the wider world. If he wanted useful information, he needed a stronger mind. You have to find an emperor-level fierce beast to hypnotize, Ye Tian decided. An emperor-level soul was at least an order of magnitude stronger than a saint-grade one. It would be far more difficult to dominate, but Ye Tian had his own methods. He searched until he found one. Nothing spectacular, just an ordinary emperor-level beast wandering alone. He didn't hesitate. Ye Tian unleashed his soul technique, a sharp, piercing strike he called Soul Thorn. A filament of cold black light shot out and struck the beast's spirit. In an instant, the emperor-level creature howled, its aura wobbling as the blow tore through its spiritual defenses. The soul was grievously wounded. Seizing the moment, Ye Tian activated his hypnotic talent. "Where is the beast that holds the Upanishad's golden talent?" he asked. The Emperor-level beast's divine consciousness answered at once. The Iron Bull Emperor possesses the Upanishad's golden talent. The name Iron Bull Emperor made Ye Tian's heart leap. He had finally found a lead. Excitement prickled through him as he pressed for more. "Where is the Iron Bull Emperor now?" "He's gone to contest the sacred dragon fruit," the Emperor-level beast conveyed. "The sacred dragon fruit?" Ye Tian's curiosity sharpened. He fired off question after question, and bit by bit the beast's consciousness filled him in. According to legend, the sacred dragon fruit grows on the sacred dragon tree, a heaven and earth spirit-rooted tree of immense rarity. The tree blossoms only once every 3,000 years. A fruit forms of the next 3,000 years, and then it must ripen for another 3,000 years before a mature sacred dragon fruit is born. The sacred dragon fruit could strengthen a creature's bloodline talent, enough to upgrade an emperor-level glowing moon bloodline to the Shiri level. But the tree only produced 9 sacred dragon fruits at a time, which meant at most 9 emperor-level fierce beasts could be elevated to Shiri-level bloodlines in one crop. When Ye Tian heard that, he was stunned. If 9 emperor-level beasts really gained Shiri-level bloodlines, the Zhonghai super base would be in grave danger. Suddenly, everything made sense. The black fierce beast hadn't simply fled, it had gone to fight for the sacred dragon fruit. Compared to a chance at that kind of power, attacking humans would have been a trivial diversion. "Do you have fierce beasts above the emperor level in your beast world?" Ye Tian asked, the question he most wanted answered. "I don't know," the emperor-level fierce beast said evasively. The last time they fought over the sacred dragon fruit, the 9 fierce beast lords advanced beyond the imperial level, and then they vanished. Maybe they fell asleep somewhere, or maybe they left the beast world entirely. Emperor-level beasts are well aware that worlds other than the beast world exist, so many assumed the lords had simply departed. Others believed the opposite. Having become almost invincible, the lords lost interest in life and drifted into long, indifferent slumbers. Ye Tian frowned. That was bad news. If beings truly existed above the imperial level, even humans armed with the God of War Tower would stand little chance. Fortunately, such super-imperial beasts hadn't been seen for ages. If they still lingered in the beast world, they were almost certainly sunk into a deep sleep and not easily roused. Ye Tian let out a relieved breath. He'd also just received word that the sacred dragon fruit wasn't ripe yet. It would take at least 5 more months. The emperor-level beast who passed on the information admitted it wouldn't dare to go there. It simply wasn't qualified. Even famously powerful figures like the Iron Bull Emperor were only marginally eligible. In truth, the only creatures that could contend for the fruit were the 12 emperor-level overlords of the beast world. Each of those 12 had lived for over 1,000 years and possessed extraordinary talent, having completed more than 10 bloodline transformations. The 10th transformation, known as the Great Transformation, made them far stronger than emperor-level beasts who had only reached the 9th metamorphosis. An emperor-level beast that had undergone more than 10 blood vein transformations was known as a fierce beast overlord. From the mouth of that emperor-level creature, Ye Tianming finally learned the origin of the Black Beast. It was one of the 12 overlords, the Black Dragon Overlord. It wasn't a true Black Dragon, but a Yalong carrying 1/3 of the Black Dragon bloodline. It had completed more than 10 blood vein metamorphoses. Exactly how many, the other emperor-level beast couldn't say, only that the Black Dragon Overlord was terrifyingly powerful and could easily slaughter whole packs of emperor-level foes. Ye Tianming understood then, bloodline metamorphosis was like breaking the body's limits repeatedly. To have done it over 10 times was to shatter the physical ceiling again and again. Coupled with an exceptionally strong innate talent, on a par with the special-born talents among the 36 emperors, the Black Dragon Overlord's strength far outclassed attackers like the Tomahawk Emperor and the others. He felt a flush of embarrassment at the realization. He already knew roughly where the sacred dragon tree stood, but that knowledge only made him more reluctant to go there. The area was crawling with emperor-level fierce beasts, not to mention the 12 fierce beast overlords, and he wasn't foolish enough to underestimate them. Even with his stealth talent, slipping past that kind of force was far from certain. Worse, some of those Emperor-level monsters were said to possess an uncanny, almost invisible perception that could see through ordinary cloaks of silence. If even one of them detected him, there would be no running fast enough to escape. He sat with the risk for a long time, turning every possibility over in his mind. Finally, after much thought, Ye Tian found a solution. A plan that might let him get close to the sacred dragon tree without being torn to pieces. Chapter 195. First break through to Emperor level, then use the camouflage ability to pose as an Emperor-grade fierce beast, and finally slip into the sacred dragon tree with my stealth skill. Even if someone detects the stealth, they'll just assume I'm an Emperor-grade beast. Ye Tian liked the plan. It made sense, but it could only work if he actually became an emperor. If he tried to disguise himself as a saint-grade fierce beast now, he'd be murdered on sight. A saint-grade beast brazenly entering the sacred dragon tree would be a direct provocation to the emperor-grade beasts. They'd swarm and annihilate it. 5 months. Emperor, he vowed to himself. The schedule felt achievable. Over the past months, his treasure-hunting talent had already unearthed a number of elixirs. After identifying them, he found several that could open the deep brain domain and thus accelerate his cultivation. With those, reaching Emperor level within 5 months no longer seemed impossible. If he could spend the next few months training hard to help unlock the elixir treasure within his deep brain domain, Ye Tian could almost certainly hit the Emperor level before the 5-month mark. He decided that unless he stumbled on an Upanishad's talent, the coming months would be devoted entirely to cultivation and to hunting for spiritual treasures that would accelerate the opening of his brain domain. His plan was practical. With his treasure-hunting talent and hypnotic ability, he could put a fierce beast under his sway, extract the location of an elixir treasure, then use the treasure-hunting talent to pinpoint it. The whole process would be unbearably fast compared with ordinary methods. So Ye Tian threw himself into work. He trained day and night, far more intensely than before, and each session produced roughly 3 times the usual progress. After the first month, he had opened another 3% of his deep brain domain, bringing it up to 93%. By the second month, I finally got lucky. I found an elixir that accelerated the opening of my deep brain domain. It opened another 4%, bringing the domain up to 97%. The third month was less fortunate. I still found plenty of other elixirs, but none of the strains that could further unlock the domain showed up, probably because I was pushing it close to the limit. Only 2% opened that month. In the 4th month, I poured everything I had into the last 1%. It took a full month of relentless effort, but I finally broke through. The deep brain domain reached 100%. The moment it completed, I stepped into the divine level. I could feel my soul swell with power, my memory sharpened to an almost terrifying degree. A faint prescience came with it as well. I could anticipate incoming attacks and even sense when someone was whispering or chanting my name. In the novel, someone remembers the power's name, and that power lets beings across hundreds of millions of worlds recognize one another. Maybe one day that'll actually happen, someone had speculated. Ye Tian only shook his head and let the thought go. That kind of speculation didn't matter right now. What mattered was breaking into the Emperor realm. He and Yuer had already gone over the key points. A cultivator could reach the Emperor realm either by tempering the body with Yuan Qi or by using an attribute ability to reconstruct the physique. Once the physical limit was broken, the step into the Emperor realm would be his. But tempering his body with Yuan Qi was too slow. The sacred dragon fruit would ripen in a month, and even with constant exertion, a month wouldn't be enough for a full Yuan Qi tempering breakthrough. He needed another method, something that could force a breakthrough in far less time. Ideally, he wanted to accomplish it in about 10 days. The world of fierce beasts was vast. There had to be places where the environmental shock, unique life forces, or rare spatial anomalies could accelerate a breakthrough. Using his hypnotic talent, Ye Tian reached into the minds of passing beasts and asked about regions suitable for forcing an emperor, our realm impact. From their fragmented memories and instinctive impressions, he pieced together a location, a place of concentrated, violent life force and raw spatial pressure. It sounded dangerous, but it was exactly the kind of crucible he needed. Fire Dragon Mountain. Huolong Mountain was an active volcano, roiling with dense, aggressive fire elemental qi. For someone like Ye Tian, born with the OE-level fire domain talent, that meant opportunity. He could draw on the volcano's power to temper his body. The first body quenching was always the most decisive. It was when a cultivator was most likely to exceed their physical limits. To do that with the raw force of a volcano behind him would make breaking those limits and advancing to the Emperor level far more likely. On top of that, Ye Tian possessed a perfect root, which gave him an extra edge when pushing past corporeal thresholds, a fact Yuer had already pointed out. "It's here," he murmured. Before him rose a mountain range shaped like a coiled dragon. In cultivation lore, the range itself was a dragon vein. Its head was a smoking volcanic crater. This was a fire dragon vein, and the ground shivered with heat and shimmering air. The environment was perfect for fire attribute fierce beasts, so they clustered here in great numbers. At the very summit, where the dragon's head, the crater, gaped open, the fire dragon mountain itself was occupied by a single massive presence, a fire attribute fierce beast of emperor rank. Ye Tian moved closer, feeling the oppressive warmth batter his skin and the crackle of elemental qi against his aura. Ash drifted across the sky like drifting snow, and the rocks themselves seemed to glow faintly from within. A roar split the air. With a rush of molten-scented wind, a colossal dragon-like beast burst out from Fire Dragon Pass. Scales shimmered like smoldering coal, eyes burning with living flame. The pass shook beneath its passage as it surged forward, announcing its dominance of the mountain with thunderous power. Species: fire-breathing dragon beast. Bloodline talent: Huiyue. Defense talent: top fire talent. Upanishads speed talent. Elementary strength talent medium. Ye Tian crouched a few paces away and let his eyes sweep the carcass. Even without labels, he could tell this was an emperor-level fire-breathing dragon beast, but its profile was uneven. Its fire talent soared, its defense was at the top, and its bloodline bore the rare Huiyue mark. Yet its speed was elementary, and its strength only medium. That was unusual. Emperor-grade beasts almost always managed to push at least one or two of their primary talents to the summit. In the fierce beast world, there were countless treasures for strengthening aptitudes. Given time and luck, a powerful beast normally kept improving. This one, however, must have settled here on Fire Dragon Mountain and never ventured out. Stagnation had left its strength speed weak. Die! Ye Tian barked, and with a single, razor-sharp strike cut through the creature's last resistance. The dragon's life ended instantly. With the beast slain, Fire Dragon Mountain, and the pass beyond it, belonged to him. He stepped forward into the Fire Dragon Pass. Rivers of molten rock threaded the valley, and the magma pulsed with a fierce current of fire energy. The air shimmered with heat, sparks hung like pollen. Ye Tian felt it at once, raw, concentrated flame ley lines ripe for harvesting. "A treasure trove," he said under his breath. Without hesitation, he stripped off his clothes and plunged straight into the lava. To someone of saint-level stature like Ye Tian, the so-called magma felt no more threatening than a hot spring. He plunged in and reached out with his will. "Absorb," he commanded. A torrent of fire yuan qi surged into him. He activated his fire domain talent seal, sweeping and sorting the fiery energy, then used it to temper his flesh. Under the onslaught of elemental fire, his body was soon wreathed in flames, not destruction, but deliberate refinement. This was the alchemy of the golden body, smelting himself like iron, burning away dross to be reborn purer and stronger. Where the process would normally be agony, Ye Tian felt only comforting heat. His Upanishad's fire domain talent shielded him from pain, letting the fire do its work without torment. Days slipped by as the transformation progressed. Muscles and sinew knit and hardened, his skin took on the resilience of forged metal. On the 10th day, his body struck the first physical limit. For a cultivator with Morning Star aptitude, reaching that limit is one thing, breaking through it is another entirely. Without some heaven-defying treasure or an extraordinary method, surpassing the first physical limit was notoriously difficult. Ye Tian had managed to reach it, Whether he could go beyond was another question. This was different from his master's earlier limit breakings, which had each focused on a single aspect, refining the skin, the flesh, the bones, the blood, the internal organs. Those were partial transformations. This time the limit being shattered was that of the whole body, an all-encompassing evolution. For cultivators with Huiyue level talent, the first physical limit was easy to break. Ye Tian's talent was Shi Ri level, which made it even simpler. He felt it build and then snap. Broken, he cried inwardly. Countless flames tore apart the shackles in the underworld. At the same moment, the first physical limit shattered. His physical power surged tenfold, reaching 100 dragon strength. His defense and speed leapt as well. His life force swelled, and his lifespan expanded to 3,000 years. In that instant, Ye Tian truly stepped into the Imperial level. Chapter 196. The moment he broke into the Imperial level, Ye Tian's power multiplied dramatically. His base physical strength, 100 units of dragon power, rose to 200 with the boost of Yuan force. His Upanishads-level power talents multiplied that by another 100, and his star-slash technique amplified it 30-fold. In short, his strongest single strike could now reach roughly 600,000 dragon power. That was not all. Ye Tian also possessed divine-grade extreme speed, the supreme space talent, elementary time talent, and several other Upanishads-level abilities. Taken together, they let him contend with opponents who wielded up to 1,000,000 dragon power. Even the Tomahawk Emperor, a man of terrifying might, could only keep him suppressed. He could not kill him. Ye Tian was closing in fast on becoming the top fighter of the Zhonghai superbase. "It's almost time. I need to get to the sacred dragon tree," he murmured. He then activated his disguise skill and shifted his form into that of a nether beast. Nether beasts naturally excel at camouflage and stealth. With Ye Tian's talent layered over it, the disguise became nearly perfect. After slipping into camouflage and entering a stealth state, Ye Tian flew toward the sacred dragon tree. After a long flight, he reached the region around the tree and immediately picked up dozens of strong presences, emperor-level ferocious beasts. Not a single holy-grade beast or any of the lower ranks could be detected. It was obvious the emperor-level creatures had driven the weaker ones from the area. This place was rapidly becoming a battlefield for emperor-tier beasts. He approached a towering mountain, and on its summit rose a sacred tree that seemed to pierce the sky. Its bark overlapped like a dragon's scales, and its branches were thick and sinewy like dragon tendons. The whole trunk coiled upward like a sleeping dragon coming to life. It was no wonder it was called the Sacred Dragon Tree. 9 sacred dragon fruits, each about the size of a face, dangled from the sacred dragon tree, their perfume drifting for hundreds of thousands of miles. Dozens, perhaps hundreds, of emperor-level ferocious beasts sat nearby, eyes glittering with hunger. When the fruits ripened, the fight that followed would be brutal. Ye Tian crept in under the cover of invisibility. At first, he went unnoticed, but then a cold voice cut through the clearing. "Who's hiding here? Trying to steal a sacred dragon fruit in secret?" The words were spoken in the universal beast language, a tongue unique to this world. Ye Tian had already learned it when he hypnotized other beasts. His photographic memory let him understand it instantly. Before he could react, a beam of light swept across the area. Boom! It struck him. His stealth wasn't dispelled, but the light hit his body and threw off a silhouette, effectively revealing his presence. Ye Tian realized that if he kept hiding, he would only provoke the others into attacking. Ye Tian's contact with the creature's cloaking talent forced the nether beast's true form to flicker into view. At once, dozens of eyes turned toward it with murmurs and exclamations. "The legendary hell beast actually exists," boomed a voice, a turtle whose shell stretched for thousands of meters. Ye Tian recognized it at once, one of the 12 overlords. Of its race, it had lived for tens of thousands of years. Among the overlords, it was the oldest, the most knowledgeable, and the calmest. "I thought it was only a legend," another growled. "I never expected to see one." "But its aura is weak," someone else observed. "It looks like a fierce beast only just promoted to the imperial level. How dare it come here to snatch a sacred dragon fruit? It's courting death." "It has a stealth talent," a third noted. If the Dragon Eye Lord hadn't seen through it at a glance, it might actually have stolen a sacred dragon fruit. Ye Tian listened to their discussion and felt a quiet, satisfied thrill. Fortunately, he'd activated his camouflage talent in time. If he'd relied on nothing more than the stealth talent, the pack would already have discovered him and torn him apart. He fixed his gaze on the creature that had managed to detect him through the invisibility. A one-eyed monster, the color and size of a yellow eel, its single, baleful eye gleaming. It was a little too far away to read its talent, but whatever ability it possessed clearly pierced through stealth. "Nether beast," Ye Tian called out, cold amusement in his voice. "You only just rose to Emperor rank. You're not qualified to snatch the sacred dragon fruit, so let's go." The dragon-eyed Emperor-level beast surged forward. One of its many tails whipped through the air like a lethal blade, aiming to cut Ye Tian down instantly. In battles between feral beasts there was no mercy. The weak were killed without hesitation. 36 Emperor-level beasts, Ye Tian calculated at a glance. If he relied solely on his Upanishad's power talent, he was hopelessly outclassed. His base physical strength was only 100 dragon force, and his Yuan force gave him only another 200. Even with the blessing of the Upanishad's level talent, he could only push out about 20,000 dragon force. Without unleashing his Star Slash, that 20,000 wouldn't even be enough to handle a weaker 36 Emperor, let alone the monster before him. The Dragon Eye Emperor-level fiend standing opposite him was at least 100,000 dragon force. It was far beyond anything he could withstand head-on. "God-level speed talent," Ye Tian shouted, activating the ability. He vanished from the beast's strike in an instant, the blow slicing through empty air. At the same time, he probed the creature's aura, taking in the details of its talent configuration. Species: Dragon Eye Crystal Beast Bloodline Talent. Huyu Crystal Talent, Upanishad's Strength. Talent, Upanishads. Defense Talent, Top Speed. Talent, Top Eye of Insight. Talent, the Dragon Eye Crystal Beast had only a top-tier speed talent. Impressive, but still no match for Ye Tian. Ye Tian's divine-grade extreme speed talent amplified his movement far beyond what the beast could achieve. Even if his cultivation level lagged behind the creature's, his speed was still superior. The beast's earlier strike had therefore failed to catch him. "Speed and defense aren't enough to scare me," Ye Tian sneered. Then he unleashed his divine-grade extreme speed and vanished in an instant, closing the gap. With a single, lightning-quick movement, he seized the beast with one claw. With a ripping slash, the claw, empowered by his slashing talent, became a terrifying blade. It tore clean through the Dragon Eye Crystal Beast's thick scales. Blood spurted from the wound. One decisive blow had injured the creature, and Ye Tian immediately withdrew. "Roar!" The Dragon Eye Crystal Beast bellowed, unleashing its Upanishad's crystal talent. A frigid breath swept over the ground. Earth and stones turned to glittering crystal. The technique itself sapped speed. Anyone caught in it would find their movements severely hindered. If Ye Tian hadn't been holding back and forced to show some of his real power, facing that crystal talent would have been extremely dangerous. At that moment, a calm, authoritative voice cut through the air. "He is qualified to vie for the sacred dragon fruit. Dragon Eye, stand down!" It was the Turtle Overlord. At the sound of its voice, the Dragon Eye Crystal Beast paused its assault and, with visible reluctance, withdrew the crystal talent. The authority of the 12 overlords far outstripped that of ordinary ferocious beasts. Challenging one of them was courting certain death. Though the Turtle Overlord spoke gently and often, that civility came only because no beast dared provoke it, push it, and the politeness would vanish in an instant. The Dragon Eye feared the turtle and dared not disobey. "Thank you, Genkai Overlord," Ye Tian said, relief in his voice. The creature might be a vicious beast, but it had torn open the siege for them. It made everything a great deal easier. There was no harm in acknowledging that, and Xuangui gave a satisfied nod. He stepped forward, and with a faint smile, murmured a quick word of thanks to the animal. Then he turned back to the boy. "Little one," he warned at once, voice firm, "don't even think about snatching that sacred dragon fruit. It isn't something you can just grab." Chapter 197. The 12 fierce beast overlords had already seized the 9 sacred dragon fruits. Even so, Grabbing them wasn't worth provoking a fight. Any other Emperor-level beast who dared to try would immediately draw the Overlord's combined assault. How many could survive an onslaught from all 12 at once? Most of the Emperor-level beasts were content to watch from the sidelines. None were willing to get involved. Ye Tian's true target wasn't the sacred dragon fruits at all, but the golden Upanishad's talent rumored to be present. Scanning the battlefield, he soon fixed on an Emperor-level beast called the Iron Bull. Species, Iron Bull, Beast Bloodline Talent, Huyu Power Talent, Upanishads, Defensive Talent, Upanishads, Speed Talent, Top Ironclad Talent, Upanishads. Iron Armor Talent, Ye Tian murmured, eyes narrowing. He liked what he saw. It wasn't a golden offense talent. Those were common enough, but a defensive golden talent was far rarer. If he could absorb that Iron Armor Talent, his defense would be boosted dramatically. Copy the Upanishads. Ironclad Talent. Ye Tian duplicated the technique into his palm. Then he copied the Dragon Eye Crystal Beast's Insight Eye Talent as well, a rare ability that could pierce through invisibility, and stored that in his hand too. With both talents contained there, he had no intention of lingering. He wanted to find somewhere quiet to fuse them, and the sacred dragon fruit wouldn't ripen for another 18 or 19 days. Staying here that long would be pointless. So he slipped away in secret. The other Emperor-level beasts, assuming Ye Tian had been exposed despite his stealth, gave up on trying to snatch the fruit and departed. The 12 Overlord fierce beasts paid his leaving no mind. To them, Ye Tian wasn't even a contender. Their rivals were other Emperor-level overlords, not him. One Emperor-level creature, however, did take notice of him, the Dragon Eye Crystal Beast. Damn you, Hell Beast. If the Genkai Overlord hadn't stepped in just now, you'd be dead. And if you'd hurt Bendy, I'd have eaten you. The dragon-eyed crystal beast snarled. It was a merciless killing machine. While other Emperor-level beasts envied Ye Tian's stealth, the crystal beast's Eye of Insight could see through stealth, so it felt no fear at all. With a flash they were gone, Ye Tian and the dragon-eyed crystal beast streaking away from the sacred dragon tree. Ye Tian noticed it tailing him, but didn't bother to hide his feelings. He only gave a dark, humorless snarl. If he could kill this beast, no other fierce creature would be able to expose his stealth talent. Near the sacred dragon tree, where the Emperor-level beasts pressed in, he couldn't use his true strength. The crystal beast following him out of that area was courting death. The man and the beast flew on and on until they were well beyond the sacred dragon tree's precincts. By then, even the 12 overlords of the fierce beasts could no longer sense what was happening. Ye Tian came to a halt in the shadow of the trees. The dragon-eye crystal beast stopped as well and advanced at once, its voice full of triumphant malice. Hell Beast, you didn't use your speed to escape when you had the chance. What a pity. Today you die. Without hesitation, it unleashed its crystal talent, a cold that raced outward like a spreading frost. Ice webbed through the trunks and undergrowth, glassing leaves and branches until the forest itself seemed about to turn into a cathedral of crystal. The dragon-eye crystal beast's intention was clear: freeze everything, and Ye Tian along with it, into immobile statues. But in the next instant the beast froze too, a puzzled snarl tugging at its muzzle. The creature that had been snarling at him had shifted shape. Where a hell beast had stood was now a man, gripping a morning star sword. Hell Beast, why have you become human? It demanded, incredulous. When Ye Tian swung the star sword, the dragon-eye crystal beast realized why. The blade cut through the air with the precise, lethal economy of a slashing technique, a blade art. Among fierce beasts, only the mantis line were born with blade-like limbs. True slashing techniques were the province of humans. A burning doubt flared. A beast could not possibly know such a skill. Unless human. The thought struck like a blow. The dragon-eye crystal beast's eyes widened. The hell beast in front of it wasn't a mutated monster at all, but a man in disguise. They, the dragon-eye and the other Emperor-level beasts, had been deceived. Escape! The dragon-eye crystal beast thought to flee, but Ye Tian's spatial confinement descended and froze the surrounding void. Since his promotion to the Emperor level, Ye Tian's supreme spatial aptitude had grown far stronger. His ability to trap space had increased many times over. The dragon-eye crystal beast, which had only just reached the 36th tier of the Emperor realm, stood no chance. Its movements were instantly curtailed, and it was rendered nearly immobile. The beast stared in shock and terror. "Top-tier spatial talent, how could your skill be so terrifying?" it stammered, then fell to pleading. "Please, don't kill me." Ye Tian ignored the entreaties and released his soul thorn technique. Like a black spear of spirit, it pierced into the dragon eye's soul and began to shred it, annihilating the majority of the creature's spiritual essence. The beast screamed in agony as its breath faltered and its life force plummeted. Ye Tian could have ended it then and there, but he did not. He intended to claim the dragon eye crystal beast's body for himself. Ye Tian possessed the high soul transfer talent, which would allow him to transfer his soul into the dragon eye crystal beast. He feared, however, that the beast's own soul might be so strong it would interfere with or even overwhelm the transfer. To be absolutely safe, he used the soul thorn talent to badly wound the crystal beast's soul before attempting the transfer. Carrying the gravely injured dragon eye crystal beast, Ye Tian went to a remote mountain range and dug a small cave deep underground. He tossed the dying beast aside, then set to work fusing two talents he had just copied into his hand, Insight Eye and Iron Armor. The fusion completed quickly. "Iron Armor talent! On!" he ordered. A suit of iron armor instantly formed around Ye Tian. The armor raised his defense 100-fold. Combined with his own Upanishad's defense talent, his protection was effectively doubled again, giving him the equivalent of 200 times normal defense. The Iron Armor talent is excellent, but it has to be merged into the 5 Elements talent. Ye Tianxia made his decision. He didn't know exactly what the 5 Elements talent would become after the fusion, but he wouldn't pass up the chance. Merge. He activated the talent-copying fusion function. One by one, the Upanishad-level talents, the Fire Domain, Water Shield, Vine, Soil Thorn, and Iron Armor, began to weave together. As the fusion progressed, he kept a wary eye on the Dragon Eye Crystal Beast, worried it might try to escape. The beast, however, had lost most of its soul. It lay collapsed and powerless, incapable of interfering. An hour later, the fusion was complete. Ye Tianxia had successfully blended the 5 Upanishad-level talents, but the effort had drained him. He was soaked in sweat and barely able to stand. View. Ye Tian checked his talent display. The original 5 Upanishads had vanished. In their place, a single, brand-new talent had appeared. 5 Elements Transformation Talent, Divine Level. When his consciousness brushed the imprint of the Divine Level talent, Ye Tian immediately understood its power. This God-tier ability could mimic the effects of the previous 5 talents at will. It could take the form of the 5 Elements Fire Domain, the 5 Elements Iron Armor, and so on. But the boost wasn't merely 100-fold like before. It amplified those effects by a full 500 times. It's truly worthy of a divine-level talent. Ye Tian couldn't contain his excitement. He felt his strength surge. He had grown far stronger overnight. Chapter 198. After resting for a while and watching the Dragon Eye Crystal Beast near death, Ye Tian activated his high soul transfer talent inside the cave. Soul transfer talent. Open. His soul condensed into a shaft of light and shot into the beast's body, sweeping away what remained of the creature's spirit and claiming the vessel completely. 1 month will be enough, he thought. Ye Tian flexed the jaws and limbs of the Dragon Eye Crystal Beast from inside. The body itself had escaped harm, so by taking control of it, he could still fight at full physical effectiveness. In exchange, however, many of his other talents were muted, and there was an awkward dissonance between his human soul and the feral body he now occupied. Even so, the beast under Ye Tian's control still possessed power at the 36 Emperor level, far stronger than the Dragon Eye Crystal Beast had been before. The 2 divine-grade talents, Extreme Speed and 5 Elements Transformation, had been suppressed down to Upanishad's level. Even so, they still made the Dragon Eye Crystal Beast body far stronger than before. With this body, I can go all out for the sacred dragon fruit, Ye Tian thought. If I fail, it won't be the end of me. He had already checked. None of the 12 ferocious beast overlords possessed any soul talent, and among the other emperor-level beasts, there was only a single soul talent of medium strength, nowhere near his soul thorn. They couldn't obliterate his soul. At worst, he could withdraw and return to his body in time. He felt no panic. He couldn't truly die. If he refused to fight for the sacred dragon fruit now, he'd be showing cowardice. Besides, his curiosity was piqued. The fruit could enhance a beast's bloodline talent. Could it also boost a human's cultivation talent? If it could, might it lift a human talent all the way to the dawning sun level? He couldn't care less about Shiri's own talent, but others needed it. His younger sister Ye and Yue both required a Shiri-level cultivation talent to advance, and if he could seize 2 sacred dragon fruits, he could give them to the 2 of them. The sacred dragon fruit only ripened once every 9,000 years. If he missed this chance, they'd have to wait 9,000 years. None of them could afford to wait that long. He had to win. Ye Tian prepared thoroughly. He adjusted the body he'd taken over and arrayed a series of concealment and defensive formations around and within it to reduce the risk of injury. When everything was in place, he burst up from the earth and stepped back into the outside world. He spent a few moments getting used to the body, testing its responses and confirming that his battle arrangements held. Satisfied, he launched himself toward the sacred dragon tree. It wasn't long before he reached the tree's vicinity. The long-awaited contest was about to begin. 100 pairs of fierce eyes were fixed on him. None of the beasts were naive. They all knew the dragon-eye crystal beast had raced off to hunt the nether beast. What they wanted to find out now was simple. Had it succeeded? An emperor-level beast called out, voice sharp with curiosity. "Dragon-eye, did you kill that nether beast?" Ye Tian answered casually, with a faint amusement in his tone. "Not if that nether beast was quick, otherwise it would have died." The implication was unmistakable. The hunt had failed. A ripple of laughter broke out among the other emperor-level beasts, mocking the supposed incompetence of the dragon-eye crystal beast. They weren't intimidated. The dragon-eye's insight eye meant little to them, and the beast itself lacked real power. What they respected and feared was the nether beast, not this creature. Ye Tian didn't bother to respond to their mockery. He didn't behave like a proud dragon-eye crystal beast, because he wasn't one. The true dragon-eye crystal beast was dead. As the days passed, the scent of the sacred dragon fruit on the sacred dragon tree grew stronger and richer. Countless strands of yuan qi flowed toward the 9 hanging fruits and Neng sank into them. The ripening day drew nearer with every breath of energy they absorbed. A few days later, a faint dragon-shaped shadow flickered across each fruit, and their skins turned a burnished gold. Every emperor-level fierce beast in the area sensed it instantly. The fruits were on the verge of true ripening. They all knew the sign. When the tree thundered with a dragon's roar, and the fruits unleashed billions of golden lights, the sacred dragon fruits would be fully ripe. No one was permitted to seize them beforehand. If a thief tried, the 12 fierce beast overlords would unite without mercy and crush the offender. Any fruit taken prematurely would be ruined and worthless. On that day, the atmosphere was electric. All the emperor-level beasts paced and hunted with eyes locked on the sacred dragon tree. Today was the day the fruits would ripen. Suddenly, a dragon's roar thundered across the sky. Shadows of 9 dragons erupted from the 9 sacred dragon fruits, roaring into the void as if 9 living dragons had been unleashed. Billions of golden rays exploded outward from the fruits, sweeping across hundreds of thousands of miles. In an instant, the entire expanse was transformed into a sea of golden light. The spectacle was brief. The light and the visions faded as quickly as they had appeared. When the mirage cleared, the 9 sacred dragon fruits had genuinely ripened. But the ripening brought with it a new, oppressive presence. The sacred dragon tree emitted a powerful aura of dominance that pressed down on everything nearby. The weaker emperor-level fierce beasts grew uneasy. Even the 12 fierce beast overlords were affected, their strength noticeably diminished. "They're being suppressed," Ye Tian frowned. This sacred dragon tree was strange, only a tree, yet capable of suppressing emperor-level beasts. Could it actually possess consciousness? Before he could mull it over, the battle erupted. 12 fierce beast overlords surged toward the mountain where 9 sacred dragon fruits hung like a prize, and the contest ignited in an instant. Shockwaves tore through the air. Claws and fangs met talons and horns. The sky darkened with the heat of their auras. Yet no matter how devastating their strikes, not a single branch of the sacred dragon tree, nor the mountain that sheltered it, would yield. The immovability of the tree and the mountain spoke for themselves. "Genkai, your time's up," the black dragon overlord sneered, his voice rolling like distant thunder. "Even if you snatch a sacred dragon fruit and lift your bloodline to the dawn level, you still won't break through to the next realm. Or do you want to hand it over to our young imperial heir instead?" He lashed his tail with a derisive laugh. The blow came swift, meant to crush. Calm as a stone, the great Turtlenkai caught the sweeping tail with one massive forelimb and a practiced grip. He did not struggle. He only looked at the black dragon as if addressing an irritating child. "You call yourself a black dragon, but you're only a sub-dragon," Genkai said evenly. "A 1,000-year-old brat who thinks he can be insolent. Your attack barely tickles me." The 12 fierce beast overlords tore into one another in a brutal free-for-all. Smaller, faster emperor-level beasts tried to dart in between them and snatch the sacred dragon fruits, but they were cut down without mercy by the overlords. Apart from the 12 at the front, those other emperor-level beasts were simply cannon fodder. Amid the chaos, one of the 12, the Golden Horn Silver Emperor, suddenly declared, "I'll take just one sacred dragon fruit." He launched himself forward, seized a fruit in a massive claw, and began to eat. The other overlords didn't dare challenge him. In theory, 11 of them could have ganged up in groups of 3 or 4 and overwhelmed him, but there was no way to organize such cooperation in the middle of the melee. So the Golden Horn Silver Emperor left unopposed, proclaiming himself first hegemon. By that point, several fruits had already been claimed in the frenzy. With golden horns taken, only 8 sacred dragon fruits remained. Ye Tian felt his heart tighten. If he didn't get a sacred dragon fruit, the scramble to survive and to advance would only become fiercer. He still couldn't make the shot stealthily, and now the only thing left was to sacrifice this dragon-eyed, ferocious beast form in vain. Ye Tian knew perfectly well that the 11 remaining fierce beast overlords hadn't been fighting at full strength. If he tried to take a sacred dragon fruit by stealth right now, he would never get away. The others might not be able to detect his stealth talent, but they could intercept an attempt to snatch a fruit, and at his current speed, even teleportation wouldn't guarantee an escape. There were only 8 sacred dragon fruits left, and the 11 overlords would never allow one to be taken easily. They would quickly move to block anyone else, and those defensive maneuvers would soon turn into a full, desperate brawl. That would be his chance. While they were locked in mutual combat beneath the sacred dragon tree, Ye Tian could slip in, steal a fruit, and get out before they had time to react. Of course, that was exactly what he intended to do. If Ye Tian tried to run, the ferocious beast overlords would certainly close in to stop him. Still, if he could withstand a few onslaughts, he might have a chance. The key was that they couldn't all abandon the sacred dragon tree. There were still fruits on its branches, and no one in their right mind would give those up. Ye Tian's odds were far from hopeless. Soon the 11 overlords surged at one another, claws and fangs flashing in a brutal, chaotic melee. Ye Tian's eyes narrowed. He had to act. If he waited, the 8 remaining sacred dragon fruits would be plucked clean. Trying to wrest them from an overlord by force was all but impossible. He activated his invisibility talent and slipped toward the tree. Every other emperor-level beast had their attention locked on the clash around the sacred dragon tree. None of them noticed him vanish. Hidden, Ye Tian moved like a shadow and flew quickly toward the branches, heart racing as he prepared to strike. Because Ye Tian had cloaked himself in invisibility, the others' divine senses couldn't detect him, and their eyes saw nothing. Even the faint ripples of yuan qi caused by his rapid approach were lost amid the far stronger fluctuations produced by the 11 fierce beast overlords locked in combat. Compared to that, Ye Tian's aura was negligible. In such a chaotic clash, who would notice his tiny disturbance? He closed on the sacred dragon tree. He wasn't aiming for a single fruit, but 2 at once. The sacred dragon fruits didn't hang within easy reach. Otherwise, the 9 fruits wouldn't still be there after such a brutal fight. He considered using the Dragon Eye crystal beast, but it had no true claws. He could force it to form a pair, but that maneuver would waste precious time. Even a tenth of a second's delay might be fatal. Use the space blade, Ye Tian decided instantly. Chop! The space blade manifested and, in a single clean stroke, sliced through both sacred dragon fruits. The attack had given him away. Ye Tian showed himself, but he didn't panic. In one gulp, he swallowed the 2 sacred dragon fruits and sealed them inside his body, then readied himself to flee. "Dragon Eye, you're courting death," roared Overlord after Overlord. They were furious. These supreme beasts had been fighting tooth and nail to prevent anyone from stealing the sacred dragon fruits, and now a pair of small Imperial Dragon Eye crystal beasts had dared to snatch 2 of them. Even the Golden Horn and Silver Emperor, the foremost of the overlords, had never behaved so brazenly. "Kill them!" they thundered and surged forward. A blinding radiance washed over Ye Tian. "Teleport," he shouted, then unleashed a space blade and activated his time talent. In an instant, he vanished. Miles away, a half-severed Dragon Eye body reappeared. The other severed forms were annihilated on the spot. They were only crystal beast husks, expendable shells, and he felt no real distress. He let out a sharp breath. Yikes. 3 ferocious beast overlords were in pursuit. The Black Dragon Overlord, the Genkai Overlord, and the Black Tiger Overlord. The rest of the overlords did not join the chase. They weren't fools. If every overlord rushed in, the spoil would be split to everyone's detriment. Better to send a few to harry the prize while the others took the fruits on the sacred dragon tree, than to all scramble and end up with less. So only those 3 gave chase. Ye Tian watched as the 3 overlords' divine senses fanned out, sweeping across hundreds of thousands of miles at once, and then settling over him like a net. That confirmed it. He could not be invisible. He thought of his dark path stealth. If he had been using stealth, teleportation would have broken it. When stealthed, he could only glide, not teleport or perform other actions. If teleporting didn't interfere with stealth, if someone could teleport while invisible and still launch attacks, that would be a power that defied all reason. Such an anti-heaven ability could not exist in this world. He couldn't hide any longer. There were no formidable beasts in the vicinity to mask him, and once the area was hit by an attack, it would be impossible to remain concealed. He pushed his luck and tapped into the bloodline power of the Dragon Eye Crystal Beast. "Teleport!" he shouted, again and again, using the beast's power to blink away at breakneck speed. Even so, his pursuers closed on him quickly. But that had been part of his plan. The chaos would draw other creatures. It worked. Beasts poured into the area with a thunderous roar. A Yalong's tail smashed into him without warning. 5 elements transformation, 5 elements iron armor. Ye Tian countered, his voice cutting through the din. "Upanishad's defense," he called in succession. "Pseudo-Upanishad's grade, diamond bone." A trio of defensive talents flared around him, each one reinforcing the last. His protective power leapt to an astonishing level, far beyond the usual defenses of the blood-eyed sorcerer emperor. Even the Black Dragon Overlord's lethal blows, which could fell many, could not finish him off. Boom! The Yalong's strike slammed him through the air and hurled him into the ground. He was knocked senseless, his body cratering the earth where he fell. At that moment, the Xuangui's attack arrived, a towering column of water that swept across the battlefield. Its force annihilated every creature within a 100,000-mile radius. The torrent struck the ground where Ye Tian lay, burying him beneath earth and water as the battlefield went silent. Ye Tian was gravely wounded and near death, but he didn't hesitate. "Camouflage talent," he muttered. In an instant, he disguised himself as an ordinary emperor-level pangolin feral beast and activated his suspended animation skill. He looked exactly like a pangolin that had been struck down, motionless, life seemingly extinguished. The 3 feral beast overlords descended and swept the area with their divine senses, but they couldn't find him. He must be using stealth. He should be invisible, the Genkai consciousness observed. Then the overlords launched a barrage of area attacks. The disguised pangolin took blow after blow, but Ye Tian held on, relying on 3 defensive measures to weather the strikes. Since it was only wide-area bombardment rather than a focused assault, his defenses could just barely endure it. After several rounds of attacks, none of the 3 overlords had detected anything. Normally, even a hidden creature would be revealed if struck, but now nothing registered, proving there were no hidden life forms in this area. Damn! It teleported away! After it! The Black Dragon Overlord snarled. They couldn't afford to waste any time. If they hesitated, they'd lose their chance at a dragon fruit. With a thunder of wings, the three fierce beast overlords tore off and scattered to search the surrounding areas. Ye Tian's heart pounded. He had to get out now. Those three were clever. They'd quickly figure out that the thing they'd seized wasn't a real Dragon Eye Crystal Beast. The real Dragon Eye Crystal Beast couldn't go invisible, couldn't wield space blades, and couldn't teleport like that. They'd assumed the creature that had fled was a nether beast in disguise. They'd checked the corpses and realized the deception. His own involvement would be exposed. He didn't waste another second. Ye Tian slipped into stealth and vanished, flying hard in the opposite direction. Chapter 200. At last, Ye Tian put distance between himself and the chaos. He flew until the fierce beast world around him spread into a vast blur, too vast for the overlords to search thoroughly. By then, the hunt had become hopeless. None of the pursuers could pick up his trail. He had succeeded. The 2 sacred dragon fruits were his. On the other side of the battlefield, the 6 sacred dragon fruits that had sprouted on the tree had already been seized by 6 rival overlords. Those 6, clutching their prizes, fled in panic. For the first time ever they ran, afraid of being surrounded and overwhelmed by the overlords who had been left empty-handed. The Xuangai Overlord, the Black Dragon Overlord, and the Black Tiger Overlord searched until exhaustion, but there was no trace of Ye Tian. Hope dwindled. Then, as their minds worked through the impossibilities, a new conclusion came into focus. The so-called Dragon Eye Crystal Beast had been a fake. They were Emperor-level overlords. They knew the powers and limits of famous Emperor beasts. Dragon Eye Crystal Beasts did not possess stealth or teleportation, nor could they slice open space with blade-like strikes. Invisibility, that belonged to nether beasts. The signs they'd seen did not match any true Dragon Eye Crystal Beast. Someone or something had been impersonating it, using abilities that didn't belong to that species. Realizing this shifted everything. If the Dragon Eye Crystal Beast was a forgery, then Ye Tian's disappearance might not be a trick of a legendary Emperor beast at all. And the whole contest had been manipulated in ways none of them yet understood. The Dragon Eye Crystal Beast went to hunt that nether beast. The Black Dragon Overlord thundered, but the Dragon Eye that came back was invisible. The real Dragon Eye was definitely killed. What returned was a disguise put on by that Nether Eye Crystal Beast. He snapped, voice full of rage. Then after a beat, wait, can the Nether Beast change its appearance? Could it be disguising itself as other fierce beasts? The Black Dragon Overlord fell silent. The Turtle Overlord and the Black Tiger Overlord had returned as well. The 3 of them converged on the ruined stretch of land. Together, they swept the area with their divine consciousness and compared what they were sensing now to what they had seen earlier. The difference hit them immediately. The pangolin's body is gone, the Genkai Overlord said, astonished. And almost every other fierce beast here is dead. There's no way another beast could have eaten the pangolin's corpse. The 3 overlords exchanged grim looks, and a single, terrible possibility formed between them. The pangolin they had seen must have been a disguise created by the Esper, a false form. But the real pangolin had clearly been killed. That hell beast actually pretended to be dead and fooled us. The Black Tiger Overlord's pupils narrowed. He was stunned. The nether beast had the audacity and skill to fake its own death. Far below, in the underground cave where Ye Tian had hidden his body, Ye Tian had returned. The carcass of his dragon-eyed crystal beast lay in tatters. If he hadn't retrieved the 2 sacred dragon fruits from the beast's mouth, he would have abandoned the ruined creature long ago. He extracted the 2 sacred dragon fruits and set them on the ground. The moment he did, his countermeasure against the high soul transfer technique activated, and the beast's displaced soul was forced back toward its body. Still, the creature had been so thoroughly torn apart that, with its soul no longer sustaining it, the dragon-eyed crystal beast was nothing more than a mutilated corpse. 2 sacred dragon fruits, Ye Tian murmured, excitement warring with grim acceptance. He placed them into his portable storage and left the cave. He had no intention of rushing straight back to the Zhonghai superbase. First, he wanted to grow stronger, then he would return. Compared with even the Tomahawk Emperor, his power was comparable now. But that was still nowhere near No. Facing the Black Dragon Overlord, Ye Tian was still at a clear disadvantage. If he wanted to protect Yue, his sister, and the Zhonghai superbase, he had to reach a level that could at least challenge the Black Dragon Overlord. So Ye Tian resolved to push himself beyond his limits again. He was prepared to shatter his physical boundaries 2 or 3 times over if necessary. If he could force his body past those thresholds, he might not become invincible overnight, but he would at least be strong enough to survive an encounter with the Black Dragon Overlord instead of being hunted down and slaughtered without a chance. With that determination, he returned to Fire Dragon Mountain. There, he intended to use the mountain's fire elemental chi to temper his body once more. The fire chi was still potent, and it accelerated his refinement in ways ordinary training could not. Days blurred into weeks as Ye Tian immersed himself in the magma's heat and the surging fire energy. Slowly but relentlessly his body changed, growing tougher, faster, and more resilient. Day by day, his strength increased. He'd also used time acceleration 3 times during his cultivation, and combined with his Shiri level talent, his progress was exceptionally fast. According to Yue, breaking the second physical limit is the first and simplest bottleneck at the Emperor level. Under normal circumstances, it takes about 10 years. Breaking the third physical limit, however, requires far more. Without exceptional opportunity or talent, it can take at least 34 years, possibly 40 or 50. Yue, who came from the Yue sect, had recently had several chances to attempt the third limit. Even the Battle Axe Emperor had only just reached the third physical limit himself. Ye Tian muttered to himself. For an Emperor-rank practitioner with Huiyue-level talent, it would normally take 10 years to break the second physical limit. He didn't need that long. Being Shiri level made him at least 5 times faster, about 2 years, and applying time acceleration 3 times would cut that down by another factor of 3. At most, he'd need around 8 months to shatter the second physical limit. Huolong Mountain's fire element Qi was uniquely tempering. It accelerated cultivation in ways few places could. Ye Tian had calculated that, with this advantage, he'd need only about half a year to shatter the second physical limit of the imperial level. Once he did, his power would surge, enough, he believed, to stand against an emperor like the Tomahawk Emperor. So he hadn't left Fire Dragon Mountain for 6 months. Day and night he trained, and to keep the other wild beasts from disturbing him, he disguised himself as one of their own, giving the impression that the mountain already had a new master. In that way, undisturbed, he pushed his cultivation forward until the appointed time. Now, at Fire Dragon Pass amid rivers of molten rock, Ye Tian drew in the blazing essence rising from the lava. His breath swelled, and his aura climbed. He was pressing against the second physical limit of the imperial level. He wasn't anxious. This barrier was within his reach. Half an hour passed. Then, with a thunderous boom as magma burst and the whole of Huolong Mountain trembled, a terrifying aura exploded outward from Ye Tian's body. He had broken through. After 6 months of relentless training, Ye Tian finally broke through the second physical limit. His raw strength climbed to 200 dragon strength, and his overall power was roughly double what it had been before. In terms of pure attack potential, he could already go toe-to-toe with the Tomahawk Emperor. With so many talents at his disposal, Ye Tian felt the Tomahawk Emperor was no longer a match for him. He brimmed with confidence. After spending a few days stabilizing his newly advanced realm, Ye Tian resumed cultivation. But it didn't take long for him to notice a problem. The fire cloud chi he was using to temper his body felt significantly weaker in its effect. The more he reflected, the clearer it became. Relying on a single Upanishad's attribute talent to refine the body produced diminishing returns. If he kept using only Fire Yuan Qi, it would take an age to break the third physical limit. Impatient with slow progress, Ye Tian decided to change the attribute of his Yuan Qi and retrain his body from a different angle. He left Fire Dragon Mountain in search of new training grounds. Using his hypnosis talent to subdue one ferocious beast after another, he pushed deeper into untamed territory until he finally discovered a promising location, Hurricane Cliff. Hurricane Cliff was an odd place. A permanent tempest howled there year-round, storms strong enough to tear apart even king-level beasts, so only wind-aligned creatures lingered. Other predators avoided it entirely. The gusts were deafening. Objects and animals could be swept away in an instant, and no sane beast wanted to risk it. But the ceaseless wind was exactly what Ye Tian needed. He possessed a divine-grade 5 elements transformation talent with the potential to evolve into the divine-level 5 elements storm talent, so training on Hurricane Cliff would rapidly temper his body and accelerate his cultivation.